Magandang umaga. Very good morning to all of you and welcome to ADB. This is a very important event and a great pleasure to also honor Dr. David for her immense contributions to food security and research in this space. My pleasure also to welcome Secretary R.C. I know this is a topic that's very close to your heart. It also happens to be a topic that's very close to my heart. This is, I started my career in ADB as an agriculture and environment specialist and continued to work on that for many years before moving to the management space. Let me share a few thoughts from my end just to provide some context and kick off today's event. We know that globally we have accomplished a lot in combating hunger. Much of this has been accomplished with the invention and dissemination of innovative and modern varieties, crop varieties, and also fish farming innovations. In fact, this was really the first foray from ADB as well in terms of our investments. We did a lot in irrigation. Our portfolio of investments also, we're very proud about the key breakthrough we made back in the 70s, being the first genetically improved tropical farmed fish, the gift tilapia. However, we know we are far from achieving the end of hunger, especially for households. We're seeing the confluence of a number of factors now with climate change, natural resource pressures and degradation, and some of the supply chain issues that still linger even after COVID, and pockets of poverty here in the Philippines and across the region where we're seeing lingering issues around hunger and food insecurity. To ensure that every individual has access to safe and nutritious food, governments, along with other development actors, must prioritize strategies and practices that address long-standing issues of poverty, food insecurity, and malnutrition. Indeed, agriculture and food security is such a complex issue that interwoven here is not just hunger and nutrition, but the imperative to look at social protection, agricultural value chain development, resilient food systems, and the nutrition aspects of this. To this end, we've a number of projects across the region that support the development of the agriculture sector, covering these issues that I mentioned. At a corporate level, this conference again is very timely. It's very aligned with the operational framework of ADB's strategy 2030. The operational priority 5 focuses on interventions that promote rural development and food security. So it's right at the smack in the center of our priorities there. Approaches such as improving rural services, efficient food systems, and incentivizing the youth to stay in rural areas are essential to stimulate economic growth and actually spur entrepreneurship. I think this is the quintessential private sector sector, if you might look at it that way. We also have a new country partnership strategy, which was launched in September, which will extend from 2024 to 2029. This is our strategy, which will anchor our engagement here in the Philippines. And strategic priority 3, our third pillar of our strategy, focuses on scaling up nature-based development and disaster resilience. Investments in climate adaptation, but also mitigation allows the rehabilitation of both infrastructure, but key to this is agricultural value chains. These measures will now support improving irrigation systems, crop production of farmers, particularly smaller agribusinesses, and to promote sustained access to food production. Our financing is also, I think, going a long way now towards supporting initiatives in pursuit of achieving food security and productivity even across the region. We have a technical assistance at the Southeast Asia level, the Southeast Asia Agriculture, Natural Resource and Rural Development Facility, which would promote rural development, food security, address poverty and inequality, and climate change issues. Here in the Philippines, the TA is supporting farmer and fisher folk consolidation and clustering, which is essential to realizing economies of scale. I know this has been a long-standing focus here in the Philippines, but this TA is trying to give this an additional spur, building capacity of rural organizations and modernizing agribusiness and agricultural value chains. Today, we'll hear from a number of esteemed scholars whose research significantly contributes to the advancement of policies ensuring food security and continued transformation of agriculture in a world of rising population pressures, deteriorating environmental issues, and of course, a changing climate. Let me extend my thanks and acknowledge the organizers who have worked to make this conference possible. This is a core group whose members are from our partners in the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, PIDS, the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, SEARCA, the Pacific Rim Innovation Management Exponents, Primex Group, and the United Nations Development Program. I should also note that the World Bank is here as well. This conference is organized specifically to pay tribute to also Dr. Cristina David's salient contributions to our understanding of agricultural development, technological transformation, and food security. So my sincere appreciation and thanks to you, Dr. David, for all your contributions. And to our invitees, I invite you to regard this as an opportunity to seek inspiration and motivation from our speakers today and address some of these pressing issues. Thank you, and I'll now hand over back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavit. And our format for today is that we have a opening plenary session where we'll have a presentation from our Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning, Dr. Arsenio Balisacan, and we'll give an introduction to the entire topic, and we'll actually walk you through the contributions, the lasting contributions of Professor Cristina David to these various fields, agricultural development, technological transformation, sustainability, and good governance. This will be followed by a response from Dr. David, and then we'll have a picture taking and coffee break. Then we will continue with a plenary presentation from Dr. 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐿𝐿. This will be moderated by Maha Ravago, and as well as a further discussion or a presentation by Dr. Ji-Kun Huang of the China Center for Agricultural Policy. If you have a suspicion behind the various names, these contributors have all been, all the way down to the list, have all been, in one way or another, collaborated with or mentored by Dr. Cristina David, and they're all esteemed scholars in their field. So you just from that you can see her impact. Let her own actual work in these areas. So without further ado, you probably don't need an introduction to the Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning of the Philippines, but he is also an academician, a professor of the UP School of Economics, and also much renowned and published in his own field, but now he is making a career out of developing the Filipino economy. RC, please.
Thank you, Roel. First, we thank the ADB, particularly the Philippine Country Office, for graciously hosting this conference. As Roel also mentioned earlier, this conference is also meant to honor an important edifice of the agricultural economics profession in the Philippines and Asia and the Pacific broadly. And I would leave the discussion on the theme of the conference to the renowned experts present here. And instead, I will dwell on the contributions of that edifice that I was talking about, and that is of Dr. Cristina David. It is impossible to capture a remarkable career like Cristina David's through a brief message. Surely, my message this morning will be found wanting, as it cannot do justice to the depth with which she has affected the work and career trajectories of many of her colleagues, students, friends, as well as the development landscapes of the Philippines and the Asia-Pacific region. Still, please allow me to highlight just a fraction of what she has accomplished. Crisostomo David was born in 1946 in Bulacan, Philippines. She received a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of the Philippines in 1967 at the cusp of exciting developments in agriculture and the economy, such as the nascent Green Revolution with the introduction of IR-8 Miracle Rice in 1966, and then President Macapagal's effort to decontrol and open the Philippine economy in 1962 to 1966. She started work in one of the 3 academic and research organizations in the Philippines, and which she would leave her indelible mark: University of the Philippines, the International Rice Research Institute, and the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. At UP, she was a research assistant for John Powers' pioneering study on the impact of price policies and incentives, economic incentives. She would then turn to sources of productivity growth in agriculture for her master's thesis in UP, while also working at IRRI on the impact of Green Revolution technologies. Part of the Green Revolution package of technologies is modern chemical fertilizers. The subject of her PhD dissertation at the Food Policy Research Institute at Stanford University under the mentorship of Professor Peter Timmer. She showed that the adoption of Green Revolution technologies was a dominant factor in explaining shifts in fertilizer dose response functions, which in turn accounts for much of the variation in fertilizer utilization across farms in Asia. Later, in 1991, she would publish, together with me, in the Philippine Journal of Development, one of the first policy assessments of the fertilizer sector of the Philippines. I hope Tina still remembered that paper. Tina then returned to UP at Los Baños as chair of economics, or the economics department, where she would serve as a faculty member until 1982. In the 1970s and early 1980s, she actively published on the sources of agricultural growth and the interaction between technological change and demand for factors of production. For labor, she found, together with Randy Barker and others, that the diffusion of Green Revolution or Green Revolution technologies led to increased demand despite increasing mechanization, owing to large requirements for weeding, threshing, and harvesting. Meanwhile, for land, she showed, together with Professor Yohiro Hayami and others, that agricultural expansion in the Philippines before the 1960s was accomplished by expanding the land frontier. By the 1960s, however, growth was achieved by increasing yield per hectare through a combination of irrigation investment and technological change, as the Philippines evaded the Ricardian trap of sharply rising costs of agricultural production with rising population confronting limited land supplies. Tina joined IRRI as an agricultural economist in 1983. Over the next decade, she continued working on the impact of modern rice varieties, focusing on issues of equity. A series of country case studies she completed with collaborators across Asia culminated in the definitive volume, Modern Rice Technology and Income Distribution in Asia, co-edited with Professor Keijiro Otsuka. who is here with us, the findings of that volume of that study was also synthesized in the journal article in the journal Economic Development and Cultural Change. They found first that the key determinants of the adoption of modern rice varieties were a favorable land and water environment, that is, irrigated and favorable rain-fed areas, rather than farm size or type of land tenure. Second, outmigration from unfavorable to favorable areas has attenuated the differential impact of labor demand and local wages. This is demonstrably the case in Nepal, where she showed, together with Hari Upadhyaya, that average wage rates have largely equalized across different production environments, owing to both permanent and seasonal migration patterns. Third, in contrast to labor, immobile land does embody long-term differences in value across space. Nonetheless, land wealth's adverse effects on income distribution have been attenuated by farm size and tenure changes, land policy, for example, land reform in the Philippines, and broader economic diversification from rice in less favorable areas. Punctuating her multi-country research was a critical engagement in 1986 for Philippine economic policy as the country changed leadership. A small group of academics in UPLB formed an agricultural policy and strategy team to conduct an exhaustive analysis of policies affecting the agricultural sector. Tina led the team, having been permitted by IRRI to join this project. And many of the members of the team are here, or some of them. Former NEDA Secretary Shell Habito here, and I saw earlier the Adriano couples, Fermin and Dada. They were part of and many of the other contributors to the volume, the first script volume that will come out of this conference, and the papers that are not presented here because of the limited time. We are also members of the team. Entitled Agenda for Action for the Philippine Rural Sector, it was more popularly known as the Green Book, and today it still remains a Bible. And that was published by the PIDS in the mid-1980s. The Green Book highlighted the regime of severe agricultural policy distortions due to quantitative restrictions, trade monopolies, export taxes, and tariffs. Behind the border, we find binding constraints, including inequitable access to land and natural resources, with wealthy landowners keeping large states to maintain access to credit and political power, over-centralization of critical and agricultural services, such as extension, underrepresentation of farmers and rural households in development policies and programs, subsidized credit and credit rationing that stunted rural financial markets, and underinvestment in public and quasi-public goods such as R&D and rural-based infrastructure. By any yardstick, the policy advocacies in the book were highly successful. Almost immediately, the government dismantled trade monopolies in agriculture, except rice, and abolished export taxes, except lags. Overall, the government embarked on a series of reforms involving import liberalization and tariff reduction programs, foreign exchange liberalization, and the institutionalization of central bank independence that reduced the protection of agriculture. The 1987 Constitution provided for agrarian reform and the role of people's organizations. This led to a comprehensive land reform program covering public alienable lands and private agricultural lands, regardless of crops. In 1991, the government implemented devolution, including farming services. Later in the decade, it was to adopt market-oriented policies in agricultural credit. All those have their roots in that Green Book that I referred to earlier. During the 1988 to 1992, she collaborated with 𝐿·𝐾𝐮𝐫𝐻𝐿 Huang, who is here, the most famous agricultural economist in China and in Asia now, on rice and cereal demand in Asia, and addressed a puzzle in rice demand analysis. In 1991, Tina and 𝐂𝐾𝐮 published a paper in the American Journal of Agricultural Economics, showing that demand for rice remained a normal good for most Asian countries, calling for more investment in rice production. Their collaboration paper, another collaboration paper published in Agricultural Economics, also found that urbanization reduced demand for rice only in high-income countries, which showed an inconsistency between income elasticity estimates of cross-section and time series data or studies. In 1992, she moved to her final institutional home as a senior research fellow in PIDS, where she had served briefly from 1982 to 1983. She would continue her work on Asian agriculture, collaborating with 𝐂𝐾𝐮 Huang on the political economy of rice protection in Asia. They published another paper in EDCC in 1996 on the thorny issue of policy protection on rice, which turned out to be stubborn and widespread across Asia, across Asian countries. Using 1960 to 1988 data, they identified econometrically the factors that negatively affect rice protection, especially among import competing countries, namely the world price of rice and the exchange rate, that is a proxy for the price stabilization motive, and improving comparative advantage in rice. It's a proxy for the adoption rate of modern rice varieties, or proxied by the adoption rate of modern rice varieties. Fertilizer protection had a positive effect on rice production. In the long run, highlighting the efforts by policymakers to compensate rice producers for rising input protection. In the long run, they recommended industrial adjustment policies to facilitate the transition away from rice farming towards non-staple agriculture and the non-farm economy. At her base at PIDS, she would focus on topics related to the Philippines, continuing past research directions and extending to new areas. Amid the controversy over joining the World Trade Organization, or WTO, she lent her voice to adopting or to advocating accession, pointing out that the country's WTO commitments fell far short of dismantling the structure of agricultural protection. When the Philippines did join the WTO, choking another policy win, she pointed out that much of the work on agricultural modernization remained unfinished. She sketched several directions for modernization in an influential 1995 discussion paper, namely A, reorienting agricultural policies to trade openness and agricultural support, B, refocusing agricultural support from private goods to public goods such as R&D and irrigation, and C, restructuring and streamlining the agricultural bureaucracy. The emphasis on market-oriented policy and on public goods would find its way into critical provisions of the 1997 Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act of the Philippines, or Republic Act 8435. Finally, in a 1999 Philippine Journal of Development paper, she pointed out that food security, which had become a catch-all justification for agricultural interventions, could not be efficiently attained owing to emerging and ill-thought policies. These include persistently high protection on food and key agricultural inputs, despite accession to the WTO, to the detriment of consumers and downstream agro-processing, land market restrictions as a result of agrarian reform, leading to misallocation and collapse of agricultural credit, and an expenditure policy favoring private goods or private goods subsidies under commodity-based programs rather than toward public goods such as R&D and irrigation. Correcting these policies is needed to achieve the long-term competitiveness of the agri-food system. She would also extend her irrigation research to urban water resources, training her critical eye on Philippine water policy. Her papers, often in collaboration with Arlene Inocencio, I hope she is here, discuss distortions in water pricing and the problem of unsustainable groundwater extraction, even as service delivery for agriculture continued to suffer after the initial advances of the 1970s. She would summarize decades of insights on agricultural development and policy in her chapter for the book on the Philippine economy, published by Oxford University Press in 2003, which I edited with Hal Hill. Tina retired from PIDS in 2006 after a productive career of nearly 40 years. But not one to rest on her laurels, she would release another research paper, this time on hybrid rice, or the hybrid rice program that year. She pointed out that unlike inbred varieties that had powered the Green Revolution, benefits from the diffusion of hybrid rice are privately appropriable given its reliance on specialized commercial seed producers. She questioned the edifice of input subsidies that had swallowed up nearly all funding of the National Rice Program. These subsidies had failed to generate its intended effects and had likely squandered scarce public resources. This study was often quoted in subsequent policy debates. She also published, together with the late Pons Intal and myself, her culminating work on distortions and agricultural incentives for the Philippines, included in a landmark volume on the topic of Asia, edited by Kim Anderson and Will Martin. In the following decade, Tina would continue to work on a post-retirement mode on Philippine expenditure policy and irrigation development. No doubt she is pleased that many of her advocacies have finally borne fruit, such as the tariffication of rice trade, reform of the National Food Authority, and the further easing of agricultural tariffs under President Ferdinand Marcos' Executive Order 62, series of 2024. Beyond her direct contributions are her enduring legacy of academic rigor, mentorship of numerous young researchers, collegial respect, and collaboration, and warmth and inspiration as a dedicated friend. The policy and research community in Asia and the Pacific owes her a deep debt of gratitude, which we will pay forward by fighting the good fight and sustaining the reform momentum toward ever higher and more significant development milestones and outcomes. You have indeed been a blessing to us all, Tina, and mabuhay.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much to all my friends present here and the institutions represented here. PIDS, NEDA, UP, IRI, SEARCA, UNDP, and ADP, who have organized this conference and book project. I tell you, this is all a surprise to me. and learned this only this morning. I cannot say thank you enough to RC and Ruel, who have led this and brought us all together today. Thank you also to all who contributed to this project. It is a privilege to be honored by these important papers from my peers, former students, and assistants, who have made a lasting impact not only in the field of economics, but also to the development of our countries. You are all not only colleagues, but great friends. Some of the eminent people here, Kay, Chikun, RC, Jim, and others, we go back a few decades before, had dinners together, traveled together, and know each other's families. My husband likes to say, whenever I have friends over, that I only ever want to talk about economics, and he is not wrong. Also, I recalled, Jim is very casual, Jim Ramaset. We have been old friends. He would just, drop by our house. And one time he dropped by, I think about noontime, and Clarissa was shouting. Clarissa was maybe 7 years old or 8 years old. Clarissa shouted, "Mommy, Mommy, your boyfriend is here." Oh, it's a good thing Sid was not around. Uh, as academics, we have the opportunity to share our ideas with others and in the process make better versions of ourselves. I think I have done this with my former students, many of whom are here today. And as a former student myself, I count myself extremely fortunate to have had mentorship of many generous people, including Peter Timmer, John Power, Randy Barker, Bob Evenson, and Yujiro Hayami. And many colleagues like Kay and Jim have been wonderful collaborators and friends. Did I mention, I just saw Jikun Wang, uh, it's really something to have had students who become top agricultural economists in their own countries. This is a supportive community of brilliant yet humble peers and friends. We have nurtured the next generation of agricultural economists in the region and beyond. I trust we all continue this tradition of mentorship and support as we guide tomorrow's promising agricultural economists. Thank you again, and let's have a productive conference today. Thank you.
For this morning's session with a couple of exciting topics. It will be moderated by Dr. Maha Lea Ravago, who is the President and CEO of the Development Academy of the Philippines and also serves as Vice Chair of the Career Executive Service Board. So those examiners or would-be examiners, take note. She has been actively involved in evaluating and promoting leadership excellence in public service, recently participating as a judge for the 2024 Presidential Gawad CES Award, which recognizes outstanding career executives in the public sector. So without further ado, may I call on Maha, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Ruel. I think that's my current role, but I have been with the academe for a little more than a decade, and I have to thank Tina David for that. My first foray in research is actually with PIDS under the mentorship of Dr. Tina David. Back then, she only hires female research assistants. So there were 3 of us, and we were called bar girls. Not because we were Tina's entertainer, but because the project we were working on was funded by the Bureau of Agricultural Research. And I grew up actually in the field of research, hearing and reading the names of the people who are here. And I know that during the time, 𝐀𝐿 was Tina's favorite student. We often hear about that during conversations. And that's actually what prompted me to pursue graduate studies because of my experience and mentorship of Dr. Tina David. So when I graduated from my master's degree, I went to 𝐅C and applied for a job as a research associate and sort of told him that he has to get me because I work under Tina. So that was my, okay, so we can start with this session. So we have the 2 sessions actually. One on the rice green revolution in Asia and Africa that will run for an hour, and another one on rural transformation in China and other developing Asian countries. So our first speaker is Professor 𝐀𝐿𝐿. He is a professor of development economics at the Graduate School of Economics, Kobe University, and a chief senior researcher at the Institute of Developing Economies in Tokyo. He received a PhD in economics from the University of Chicago in 1979, and prior to joining Kobe University, he was a professor at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies from 2001 to 2016. Formerly, he was a chairman of the Board of Trustees of the International Rice Research Institute from 2004 to 2007, and president of the International Association of Agricultural Economists from 2009 to 2012. He is an honorary life member of IAAE, a fellow of the Agricultural and Applied Economics Association, and a distinguished fellow of the African Association of Agricultural Economists, and of course, a longtime colleague of Tina David. So without further ado, let us hear from Dr. 𝐀𝐿𝐿.
Thank you very much for a very nice introduction. Can I go to the first page? Yeah. I have to make some revisions about my position. I'm a special professor at Kobe University, but not only that, but also I'm a senior fellow of SEARCA and visiting professor of UPLB, and also research fellow of Asian Development Bank Institute in Tokyo. So I'm closely related with the sponsors of this conference. But in my mind, this paper is dedicated to my long-term friend and colleague, Tina David, as a part of the Festschrift attempt. So this may be wrong, But Tina initiated a project called Differential Impact Study in 1985. But it could be 1983, because as we said, Tina joined Erie in 1982. So maybe she started ideas in 1985, 83 or 4. So high-yielding rice varieties were adopted, mainly in irrigated and favorable rainfed areas in Asia. And many donors of Erie criticized the Green Revolution or Erie by arguing that the Green Revolution neglected poor people prone to drought, poor areas prone to drought and flood. Therefore, they put pressure on Erie to develop high-yielding rice varieties for such unfavorable areas. But Erie, however, had never succeeded in developing such varieties, even though serious effort had been made, implying that huge amount of research fund was wasted. Although recent years using biotech, drought-tolerant and submergence-resistant varieties were developed and diffused to some extent in South Asia. And DIS project asked if and to what extent poor people in unfavorable areas, i.e. landless and marginal farmers, migrate to favorable areas where labor demand increased to receive benefits of the rice green revolution. So KO means myself. KO participated in the DIS project in 1986, summer in 1986. But at that time, I was a young, useless, inexperienced researcher. But Tina kindly accepted me and guided me immensely. And I really appreciate her guidance. I was like a baby at that time, but using Tina as a springboard, I jumped and I've become a pretty productive researcher. So a lot of competent people in Asia participated in this project. And in order to save time, maybe I should not tell the names of everybody, but everybody made serious contributions, significant contributions to agriculture in each country, including Justin Lin, Mahbub Hossain, who passed away, unfortunately. And unintentionally, we tested the so-called external validity in the area of randomized control trial. Some conclusion is obtained in certain area where RCT was conducted, but the question is whether the same thing happens in other areas. And that is an issue of external validity. Unintentionally, we did that. We compared the situation among 7 countries, and we obtained very robust conclusion. And Professor Hayami was an advisor for the DIS project. And he strongly opposed to the plan of the DIS project because we covered 7 countries. He said, you should choose 2 or 3 at most. And I don't think Professor Hayami told to Tina. He just told me. And I actually ignored his advice. And however, I think it is very clear that who was correct. Hayami or Tina K team. In 1994, Tina and I successfully edited the classical book on the Asian Green Revolution entitled Modern Rice Technology and Income Distribution in Asia. As you mentioned already. So this is the book, and this is cited 531 times according to the Google Scholar citation as of October 25 this year. This means even those who have never read our book refer to our book. Otherwise, the number of citations becomes as much as 531. But that's a good thing for us. And already RC explained the essence of the DIS project. So I can, shall I skip this? Yeah, so we have looked at irrigated areas, favorable rainfed areas, unfavorable areas prone to drought, unfavorable areas prone to submergence. So it's clear that the MBO adoption is much higher in irrigated and favorable rainfed areas everywhere. I chose 4 countries, but I could have chosen 6 countries. And yield levels are also significantly different across regions. But nonetheless, wage rates are very, very similar across areas. So, bullet number 0.3. However, wage rates tend to be equalized across production areas. This is because of the labor migration from unfavorable to favorable areas, which supported our main hypothesis that the labor market regional labor market is working. So we contend that it is misleading to argue that the Green Revolution neglected unfavorable rice-growing areas. Moreover, net consumers of rice benefited from low rice prices made possible by Green Revolution. Varieties and irrigation ratio. As you can see, MB adoption started earlier and more widely in the Philippines compared with India. To transfer the technology from the Philippines to India, there was some adaptive research efforts by crossing local varieties with yield varieties and so on. This graph shows the yield trend of Southeast Asia and South Asia. As you may expect, the yield increased initially in Southeast Asia, but South Asia has caught up with the Southeast Asia, particularly because of the subsidy programs of India. But now it is very clear that South Asia has caught up with Southeast Asia. So the question, and then the last line, the last curve refers to Sub-Saharan Africa. Yield has been largely stagnant, but if you carefully look at it, from 2005 to 2021, yield increased by 50%. So the question is whether this is the beginning of the Green Revolution or one-time phenomenon. So the improved rice technologies were transferred successfully from the Philippines to many other countries, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, and so on. And yield varieties are crossed with local varieties to enhance adaptability of improved varieties to local production environment. So the technology moved from the Philippines to other South Asia, and why not to Southern Africa? Why the transfer has stopped in South Asia? That's the question I have been addressing for the last 15 to 20 years. Irrigation ratio is roughly 20% around 2005 in Sub-Saharan Africa. There is no good data. Therefore, most areas are rain-fed, so the production environment is not as favorable as in Asia. I think in Asia, irrigation ratio is about 50%. There are no data on the adoption rate of modern varieties in Sub-Saharan Africa. Since rice is not the main staple crop in most areas in Sub-Saharan Africa, areas unsuitable for rice production are planted to other crops, mostly maize, cassava, sorghum, and millet. In my observation, as population increased, the farmers cut down trees in the forest and hills to expand the upland fields. But now, they did not touch the wetland. But now, there is no more room for further area expansion on the hills and in the forest in Sub-Saharan Africa. Then farmers gradually realized that, oh, unused wetland can be used for rice production. So they started the rice production quite late. And that led to a rapid expansion of paddy fields now. Such wetland is fertile, moist. Many of them are located in so-called valley bottom. Topography is undulating, and therefore they're at the bottom, which is fertile, moist, and therefore appropriate for lowland rice production. So I believe that such rain-fed paddy land is more favorable for rice production than most rain-fed areas located in flat areas in Asia. This one shows land population ratio. You may imagine that in Africa there are a lot of elephants, lions, and tigers, etc., moving. That's only in safari, not everywhere. In fact, land labor ratio has been declining, and current situation is similar to the situation in Asia in 1961. So there is a strong population pressure. Why not green revolution is the question. This is changes in harvested area of major grains. The maize, as you can see, maize is by far the most important crop. But the rice area has been increasing very steadily. Wheat productivity is very high, but wheat can be grown only in cool climate, like highlands in Kenya or Ethiopia. So rice land has been increasing. Now it's almost equal to area planted to millet. It will continue to increase. In fact, in East Africa, people say that we want to eat rice on birthday, on Christmas Day, New Year Day, funeral, and so on and so forth. So rice is a special food for them, and they love it. And they say that cooking rice is much easier than cooking maize flour. So it's also time saving. And I cannot forget about this memorial plate built in the entrance of International Rice Research Institute. I saw it in 1986 when I joined the project. The International Rice Research Institute, an educational and research center. An educational and research center. Why is it educational center? It should be a research center. What does education mean? I've been thinking about these questions for the last 4 decades, since 1986. I have no answer. In 1969, there was a famous paper published by Bruce Johnston and John Coney. Tina, do you know John Coney? Was he professor at Stanford? No. They published a famous book, a paper in American Economic Review, the seed fertilizer revolution, blah, blah, blah. So they argue that green revolution is nothing but seed fertilizer revolution, improved seeds and more fertilizer. Even as of now, many renowned agricultural economists, such as Doug Goring and Michael Carter, both of them are very good friends of mine. So if they are around here, I will not mention this. But since they are not here, they assume that the essence of green revolution is seed fertilizer revolution. The World Bank people, African Development people, also agree with this view. In fact, I requested Japanese Ministry of Finance to allocate $100 million for the development of rice sector in Africa. And 80 million was used by the World Bank. And what free improved seeds, free inorganic fertilizer. That has an effect temporarily in a year or two, and that's a stupid, extremely stupid policy. So how can we reconcile the statement, IRRI is education center, with the hypothesis that green revolution is seed fertilizer revolution? That is the issue I've been addressing. And then I applied Tina K approach of covering 7 countries. Again, we about 7. In 2007, I recommended the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan and JICA to undertake rice production expansion program in Sub-Saharan Africa, as I was very sure at that time that the rice is the most promising crop in Sub-Saharan Africa. JICA initiated international project called Coalition of African Rice Development in collaboration with AGRA. AGRA is Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, support. One of the card was to double rice production in Africa from 2008 to 2018, which have been just achieved. And some people said that Professor 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜𝐿 made very accurate, computation and estimation, and then put up the target of doubling. That's totally wrong. I was drinking wine, and I said, okay, double in 10 years. But that was just correct. Most competent agricultural economists in Japan, and conducted case studies in Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal. And then we published 8 to 10 papers in international journals and published a book, 3 books. Last book is an open access book, so if you're interested, you may access to it. So to simplify, main messages of the 3 books can be summarized in this way. First book said rice is likely to be the most promising cereal crop in sub-Saharan Africa because of the high transferability of Asian rice green revolution technology. In contrast, maize technology is very location specific. So even if certain maize variety is grown very well in India, it may not be grown very well in Kenya. Second book argued that rice cultivation training programs are effective in dramatically increasing rice yields in sub-Saharan Africa. Even without increasing chemical fertilizer, and even without using modern rice variety, if proper cultivation methods are adopted, rice yield increases by 50%. If improved varieties and more fertilizer is used, then yield doubles. And the third book argues that rice green revolution is management intensive. This is not duly recognized in sub-Saharan Africa. That's a problem. And the impact of rice cultivation training programs on productivity are not only significant, but also sustainable. Impact sustains. And also there is a significant spillovers from training participants to non-participants. So it's like a local public good. Mechanization, rice farming, and introduction of improved milling machines all play supportive roles in realizing full-fledged African. One time I talked with Tina about what is the definition of paddy field. We ended up with the conclusion that fields which are banded is a paddy field. But that's wrong if we include sub-Saharan Africa. As you can see, there are many paddy fields without bands. No bands, no water, then there are a lot of weeds. That's a problem. This one is better. That one is funny. Probably Europeans who do not know about bands recommended to build the huge bands. Leveling, the paddy field must be flat to achieve even distribution of water, and that leads to healthy plant growth. And straight row transplanting makes it possible to remove weeds. Yeah, this is my favorite photo. I'm not attracted by these women. I'm attracted by the fact that these women use a knife to harvest. So in the 1960s, there were ani knife used in Indonesia, but I have never seen it. So she's using knife to harvest selectively. I'm sure 1 week later she'll come back and then harvest again, and 2 weeks later she'll finish harvesting. It's a very inefficient way of harvesting. Why did that happen? I'm not a specialist on rice technology, but most important reason is a lack of leveling. The fields are not leveled. Therefore, some plants grow fast and others grow slowly. This is a beautiful paddy field in foot of the Mount Kilimanjaro, which is other. This field is actually managed by JICA. So this is a special field, but IR51, for some reason, IR51 is grown here, and the yield is about 6 tons per hectare. So I cannot tell, I traveled a lot, but I cannot tell the numbers, but there are many paddy fields in Sub-Saharan Africa without banding, leveling, straight row planting, weeding, careful self-production of seeds. I can tell 99% of farmers do not know how to produce seeds carefully. So seeds quality deteriorates. There are, however, areas where paddy production is carefully managed. The red one shows the top 5 countries in terms of yield over the last 40 years or so. The yield has been increasing and almost caught up with the Asian level. So green revolution is taking place in certain areas, but not everywhere. That's a problem. And Africans love rice, and its consumption increased dramatically. Per capita consumption is about 25 kilograms per year. In the Philippines, I guess 110 kg per year. If you eat rice 3 times a day, more than 100. But here, they eat 25, but 20 years ago, it was 12 or 13. It doubled. So for another 10 to 20 years, I think production per capita will increase to 40 kg per capita. In Japan, it's now 50. So, and then declining. So it will become equal very soon. Do I still have some time? This one, yeah, I can skip this, but the JICA invited competent farmers, selected competent farmers as key farmers, and then each key farmer is supposed to train 5 friends called the intermediary farmers, and the intermediary farmers are supposed to tell the new production methods to other farmers. As you can see, the yield of key farmers in 2008 was 3 tons, but it became nearly 5 tons per hectare. It depends on the rainfall, which is shown in the bottom. So it increased from 3 tons per hectare to 5 tons per hectare. And if you look at intermediary farmers, they got 2.5 in 2008, but gradually it increased to more than 4 tons. 2012 was a bad year, very short rainfall, but still they got 3.9. So if rainfall is normal, yield would have been more than 4 tons per hectare. 4 tons per hectare is very high. In Asia, 4.2 or 3 is average. So yield also sustained, yield increase sustained, as you can see from key farmers, and the intermediary farmers also increased. And then lastly, other farmers also increased the yield eventually. And if you look at fertilizer application, leveling, etc., you can see the same trends. Okay, so this is the last slide. So initial conditions were different between Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Before the Green Revolution began in Asia before 1966, paddy fields were not beautifully banded, but somehow banded. And it was not totally flat, not leveled beautifully, but leveled to some extent, even though straight row planting was not common. According to my interview with the old researchers and assistant like Bioli, in contrast, there are many paddy fields without bands leveling and leveling in Africa. Moreover, seeds are seldom selected, and timing of transplanting is usually late, and harvesting is often too late. Therefore, effective extension system is a key to a rice green revolution in Sub-Saharan Africa, because rice cultivation is new for many African farmers. Our studies found that the impact of rice cultivation training are not only effective, but also sustainable with information spillovers from training participants to non-participants. So in other words, Sub-Saharan Africa needs educational center to achieve full-fledged green revolution, as was recognized by IRRI more than 50 years ago. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. 𝐀𝐿-𝐶𝐫, for that interesting presentation. So we now have a few minutes for question and answer. So please, if you have questions or comments, you can take the microphone. Okay, Jim is now raising his hand. So this is Jim Romaset.
Yeah, so on the training results, it's likely that the people who would benefit most from training are the ones selecting training. So have you thought of controlling for the selectivity bias? It's likely that you still get positive results, but it might be nice.
Can we take one more question so that you can take a breather? One more question, Ruel.
Thanks, Kay. I know very little about African agriculture, but your description of the need to essentially take over the lowland, the wetland areas, suggests to me a very large investment requirement, right? Because of the unique challenges compared with, say, Asian agriculture, of having to drain and pile over those wetland areas, plus the potential ecological implications. So I'm wondering whether there is indeed that scope, given the land requirements in Africa for rice expansion.
Okay, Kay, would you like to answer? Do we have another microphone? Nasaan yung organizer? Another microphone.
Thank you very much, Jim. Yes, but we have also applied RCT, randomized control trial. But problem of randomized control trial is we have group A and group B. We train only group A people and not group B people. But group B people tend to ask group A people, what did you learn? If there is information spillover, then we cannot accurately assess. So in Cote d'Ivoire, we asked group A farmers and group B farmers, please don't talk. Please don't talk. And then we collected data, and the group B people did not change the farming practices. Only group A did. And the following year, we went there again. Please talk. And then group A people talked to group B people. And the following year, we went there. And then the productivity became almost equal. Also, we conducted RCT using the village as a research unit. So village A, B, C, D, E are trained. People in those villages are trained, and people in FGH, etc., are not trained. And then we compared after the training. So I don't think selective bias is a serious issue in our study. Yeah, I think it's a hard work, but in Uganda, I went to Uganda many times. Uganda, it looks like this. And then in 2005, where I traveled for about 200 kilometers, I found only wetlands with the papyrus, the weeds. And then 10 years later, when I went there, it was difficult to find the wetland, all paddy fields. So farmers converted the wetlands almost completely into a paddy fields. So even though it's a hard work, they're willing to do it because they have problem about food security. So I'm not worried about the speed of conversion of the area. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. K, for that presentation. My question is actually related to what Roel manifested earlier. You mentioned in your presentation several times that rice is the commodity with the most potential. And then an added phrase to that is maize is quite selective area-wise. I think given what we have in the Philippines, it's quite the opposite. Rice is more selective investment-wise. You have to develop irrigation to have acceptable yields. And probably as mentioned by Roel, in Africa, you need to invest a lot in terms of also giving enough water to rice for it to reach the supposed potential of this commodity. So can you add more insight or elaboration to your earlier manifestation? Thank you.
Can you show my slides? Can somebody there show my slides? I skipped the last slide. Can we go to the last page?
I think they are working on it.
Please go to the last page. Thank you very much for your attention. There is another one. Yeah, the question is very relevant and very good. I want to talk with you, but I need maybe 2 hours to talk.
Here it is, Kay.
Yeah, next page. Next page. No more page? This is a page. The first paper, there's a typo. This is 2024 or 2025. It's forthcoming. I worked with Thomas Jane, who is a leading researcher on maize in Africa. We compare the case of maize and rice in this paper. This is one of my best papers in my academic career. I recommend you to read it. This is very, very important contribution. We argue that rice has less location specificity. Maize has more location specificity. Because in the case of maize, problem is the soil fertility. Soil fertility declines, but in different ways. So how to restore the soil fertility differs from place to place. So for maize, we need strong national research program and looking at optimum technology mixes specific to each country. On the other hand, in the case of rice, not research. Of course, research is needed in the long term, but please, you can have access to that paper already if you go to the homepage of food policy. But I'm very proud that we collaborated very effectively on this issue. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? I've seen several hands earlier. Any other question before we move on to the second presentation? Okay. Earlier, I think Kay was showing a picture of a paddy rice. I was reminded of a story. I don't know if this is true. Jim must have been the one who told me this story. Back in the day when Tina was still a very young researcher, I think she did a sort of tree planting rice. Is that true? That you went into the mud and experienced how it was planting rice. And there was a photographer, and she became a poster model for planting rice during the time. Was that true? And of course, back in the day, Tina was a very beautiful young researcher, much like Monica and Clarissa today, only more beautiful. You cannot object. This is your mom's day. All right, so is that true? That you did plant, right, in the mud? Ah, it's a photo op, okay. But you became a model. That's what I've been told. Yeah. Yeah, so it was Jim who told me that story. Okay, we can move on to the next session, and this is rural transformation in China and other developing Asian countries. The next speaker is a professor and dean of the School of Advanced Agricultural Sciences at Peking University, director of the new Rural Development Institute, and founding director of the China Center for Agricultural Policy, a fellow of TWAS and multiple agricultural economics associations. He also served as the vice president of China Agricultural Economics Association and past president of the Asian Society of Agricultural Economies. With a PhD from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, his research spans agricultural policy and rural development. He has published 24 books, over 640 papers, and advised on key Chinese policy committees, receiving numerous awards. And of course, he is the favorite student of Dr. Tina David. Ladies and gentlemen, 𝐾𝐞𝐯𝐞𝐿.
Can I have my PPT? Anyway, it's a great honor to be here to present my study in front of my advisor, Dr. Christina David. The PPT is coming? Yes. Anyone is, I think, working on this? Oh, yeah, it's here. I'm going to talk about rural transformation in China and also talk other developing countries. So go this way or another way. Let's honor our Dr. Christina David. Excuse me, can I? Okay. As I said, I dedicated this presentation to my esteemed mentor, Tina Han, to honor her important contribution to agricultural development and food policy, and also thank her for her continued nurturing me and guiding me in writing academic paper. That these two papers in AJAE and EA, when I was a PhD student, come from my PhD thesis 2 chapter and under her guidelines. And she and I left Erie, and still continue working with me in agricultural and food policy in Asia. In 1996, we published paper together in rice, political economy of rice price protection in Asia, in EDCC. When I back to China, nor go to US, so I back to China. I initiated I launched a Center for China Agricultural Policy. It's in 1995. He has been the board member of SEARCA since the very beginning. I see many these people in this beside Tina K also here, and later I see also our member of board. And we also have good our family often eating together, playing together. Besides, we are hard working. We'll spend some time to go out to see some nice place. And my presentation, as first start what agricultural growth in China, how transform, and what are major driving force. I was going to talk about a major challenge of facing how government responds to this change. Then I compare China transformation with other Asian countries, try to come out some important finding. Finally, I make a few concluding remarks. But before I going to tell you how China transformed its economy and culture in past 4 decades, let me remind you that China is about nearly 20%, 80% of world population. We only have 6% of global fresh water, 9% of cultivated land. And you might quite concerned how China can provide food for its growing demand. But let me also give a 3 number. Under low-risk people, population declined from 23% in 1990 to 2020. It's less than 2.5%. I think now probably only 1%, even less than 1%. And stunting rate under 85 also reduced from nearly 1/3 in 1992 to only 3% by 2020. And rural poverty eliminated in 2020. China, we don't want to say have poverty there, but we want to solve low-income people how to increase income. But how can achieve this? Achieve in this full scale in the poverty reduction? As I want to, if you only give me one answer, I said a cultural growth rate is rapidly in past 4 decades. Annual growth rate more than 5%. In meantime, the rapid inclusive rural transformation for the country that's 1.4 billion people, a growth rate for more than 5%. I think this is very few countries can do like that. How can do this? Of course, any country in Asia like China have to deal with grain security, with food security in Asia, many countries, rice security, grain security. Here, so in past 4 decades, grain production more than double, and where are come, of course, it comes from year growth. Indeed, any our grain have declined a little bit, declined few percent. And over past 4 decades, China allocated additional 10% of annual for non-grain commodity, cash crop, livestock, fishery. And that make a culture grow much faster than grain growth. This show you how annual growth rates for different commodity over in past 4 decades. Grain production in red one, annual growth of 2.1%. That was more than twice growth rate of population. So China was able not only get self-sufficient in many commodities, in like rice, wheat, and in some things also maize. And they allowed additional land for cash crop, livestock, fishery production, and that grow much, much faster. That's why cash grow in real terms more than 5%, 5.4%. And this is just part of the story, which increase in productivity in agriculture, particularly labor productivity, more people moving off agriculture. Rural labor, more than 40 years ago, only less than 10% of people working off-farm or non-farm activities. Now it's more than 85% of rural labor working full-time or part-time in farming. This growth in agriculture plus off-farming employment, that make agricultural income growth nearly 20%, 20 times from 78 to 2020 in real term. And this growth also, that's what not only increase income, but also improve national household food security. It's hard now to find in China rural people cannot feed themselves. Here, there are many kinds of transformation in China. moving from green economy to high value agriculture. I think this is a very important implication not only for China or for other Asian countries. We are rice. China also grain also important, grain. But you look at the 40, if 40 years from 78 to 1978 to 2018, when we started reform, about half of agriculture in China is green economy. Every 10 years, it's increasing for non-green economy. And then now most of our province, non-green economy in agriculture more than 80%, about 1/3 of province non-green agricultural economy, it's more than 90%. I think this is make significant change, make farmer income keep growing, which with certain level of grain production, we move to non-grain economy. In the meantime, I mentioned the other rural transformation is rural labor employment. In 1978, when China started reform, on average less than 10% for most of province working off farm. But every 10 years, it's increasing significantly over time. And that may help farmer to increase their income. Of course, rural transformation cannot happen without a significant structural transformation. In China, we see the conversion of agricultural GDP and employment for every province. Each point is one province. This agricultural GDP, this agricultural share of employment in economy changes over time. The third line is the difference on this line. You see, and by which income we increasing in this share agricultural GDP, agricultural employment share are converging. That means agricultural productivity of labor is approaching the industry. That make narrow down our income difference between farming and non-farming. And those, I think, present you some figure which is happening in China. Indeed, in past 4 decades, China has moving classify a 4 state. Start from 1978, that time was primarily on stable food production before until early 1990. Then with productivity increasing, we moved to diversification, commoditization, and then later we moved to farming, non-farming, and now we move to more grain secure to high value agriculture. In the meantime, also move to China called integrated rural urban development. And recently, we also say we move to green agriculture. And this movement is happening every province. And this focus just horizon one, left one is share of high value agriculture, right one share of non-farm employment for rural labor. Vertical one is per capita income. I think it just clear. So if a country, if a province, if a district want to increase farming income, we have to facilitate rapid rural transformation within agriculture and help people move out of agriculture to industrial service sector. That's, I would say, key experience China gained in the past 4 decades. And that is experience is not only for farmer income, also rural poverty reduction. Again, left side is share of high value agriculture, right side is share of rural labor employment in non-farm. Vertical indicators rural poverty insistent. And we have 3 levels because before 1990, China poverty line is less than $1 per day, and the middle one is more than $1. Third one is nearly $3 per day poverty. But I think the figures so clear picture of rural transformation within agriculture and moving out of agriculture to off-farm employment, significantly correlating with rural poverty reduction. And we do econometric analysis, so same story. Really have positive impact to reduce rural poverty. Now, how has lunar been transformed in past 4 decades in these through four states? I think I wrote about 50 papers about how China moving from 1978 to now in international journal. But here just show you a few key important driving force. When we started reform in 1978, irrigation, that time it's roughly about more than 40% irrigated. And then when we reform, they moved to 50% irrigated. We have good irrigation infrastructure. Of course, in the middle term, I want to show you important institutional reform, non-reform, located non-collective land to each household equity. Every household gets the same amount by population, and every household get food security issues. Within 5 years of reform from 79 to 84, in middle rice we made TOP increased by 50%. 5 years TOP increased by 50%. And 50% of farmers in China get out of poverty just in early 1980. Just one institutional reform. Meantime, of course, China Green in the revolution started in 1960, continue expanding hybrid rice, 12%, and others made and increasing chemical fertilizer. That helped farmers continue to increase in the productivity. So institutional right, have good infrastructure, irrigation, and then have technology marketing right together with chemical fertilizer use, have significant rise in productivity. Within 10 years, China moved to second stage, diversification of commercialized agriculture. How to diversify the commercialized? Because diversification, commercialization, big problem is the agricultural market, wholesale market, no infrastructure, and a huge amount of investment in late 1980, early 90, invested no contraction. The soldiers, 100 soldiers in the wholesale market established. That's I took a picture in late early 1990 until early this year. Yeah. The first one is village. When farmers plant vegetable, you don't have market to sell in. So we need to create a place in the village to help farm bring vegetable to here, and other people pick here. And you have a truck, you can drive your vegetable to the township in the middle. You have big truck that you can drive your vegetable through to the county wholesale. And bottom one is the wholesale market in urban area like Beijing. So that's 100 soldiers in the wholesale market linked with small farmer to the consumer, and it's hard, difficult to see farmers to have a difficult selling their product. I think this institution change in marketing, the infrastructural development will play very, very important. And that stage of development. With commercialization, China and more people available for other activity. We China develop township, village enterprise. You can work part-time in farming, part-time on farming. That create a lot of job for rural labor. In meantime, China started marketing, rental market development. The red one sold by 2013, the percentage of farmers rent out land. And the blue one sold the percentage of farmers renting in land. So over time, more people renting out the land to less farmers, less number of farmers, to then start consolidation, farmer side increasing. Which is fine. In the meantime, China also has a system. Even farm side most are less than 1 hectare, but by 2015, within 80% are machine harvested. And by last year, 100% are rice within maize are harvested, mechanization harvest, 100% land are mechanized cultivated, because the customer is by customer service. The blue one, the bottom one is you hire people to prepare your land, to harvest your land. It's a customer service, very cheap customer service. It's much cheaper than do you by yourself. Red one, you have your own machine. And the top one, green one is still used by neighbor, by others, but later by 2015, when we at a third stage, as I said, now it's 100% all mechanized. Not only this, 𝐀𝐻 party continue to FTP continue to increase at about 3% per year. This technology change many labor saving technology that's increasing. So again, institution change, technology change, investment in machinery all play important for Chinese farmer moving to third stage to fourth stage. But nearly very important is investment in 𝐀𝐻. This is investment in 𝐀𝐻 forced by education, by government. I heard from RC, the Philippines is probably going to have a Ministry of Water. That is very important for different country. But not only China invests in irrigation, indeed, government invests in many infrastructure, including marketing infrastructure, road infrastructure. That make 𝐀𝐻 transformation, rural transformation very fast within 4 decades. That's the government investment in real term over time. It's much faster than farmer income growth. So I have paper to summarize the 40 years of China rural 𝐀𝐻 reform and what are major driving force. I have summarized 4 major key driving force. First, institutional reform in land, water, marketing, very important. And this doesn't spend any sense of government money. And indeed, they not only not spend money, but also create huge amount of efficiency gain. Technology change, China technology change, most come from China, and then there are number of studies so China party growth is more than 60% come from technology change. Marketing reform also very, very important because you are optimal location of your product within whole big China, within 1.4 billion people. That make every place can specialize 1 or 2 commodity. Only one thing in the environment is invest in 𝐀𝐻, of course, that's important too. So when we are moving to last stage, green security, then we move, continue high-value 𝐀𝐻, move green 𝐀𝐻, integrated urban rural. So in China, we call it in some rural revitalization. Justin afternoon will give focus talk about this rural revitalization. But when we move into this, it's a great story of China transformation in the growth, but indeed, there are a number of challenges China are facing. I summarize 3 big challenges we are facing. First, farmer income in first 40 years, from 1978 to 2018, farmer increased income is nearly 19 times, but urban income also increased. It's 17 times. In early time, urban income is much higher than rural income. So which the income gap is quite high. Rural income now, urban income is still about 2.5 times higher rural income. That is the government concern about it. And second, food security. We see high growth of 𝐀𝐻 in China, but that growth, or in some have been slowing demand growth even faster than 𝐀𝐻 growth. So we see food import, the red one, have been more than exported since last 15 years, and the gap of deficit of food import have been increasing, and that's become quite concerning. And last but not least, environment and the degradation problem. Because past production growth has been at the expense of resource environment degradation. Otherwise, we will not able to grow 5.4% annually for 40 years. We see groundwater falling, soil problem, long-point pollution. That is very big, big challenge China facing since early this century when we move into fourth stage of rural transformation. So what can China do in the past 15 years or 20 years? First, China decided to move to taxing agriculture to subsidize agriculture in 2004. 2004, before that, agriculture have to pay about 8% agricultural tax to government. Yeah. And then we move to subsidy. Subsidy started in 2004 have been increasing over time, but China also getting lessons. I put some mark here, question mark here. And by 2011, 2012, China find the subsidy is not way to go, too expensive. So China never off top this subsidy in the and not going up, move to income subsidy. We take 15 years learn a lesson. Subsidy for millions of small farmers is not going to increase income, but moving subsidy to income support and for R&D investment. China also started market intervention in 2004, but they found again getting lesson. We can't do this again. But so since middle of 2010, China stopped market intervention again. But the policies try to raise farmer income. Again, investment in agriculture as said have been continued policy in the past. But even the government has huge investment in agriculture through subsidies, through income transfer from investment. But grain security is still a major concern by government. I think this is everything, same thing for the Asian country. So, in 2015, China we call two strategy: store grain in technology strategy, grain you can also food in technology. And two indicators I want to just say: China now has huge investment in biotech, in plant breeding, a huge money. Second, China or indeed investment in R&D is since 2013, not 2015, already exceeded U.S. as number one in the world in agricultural R&D. That just show you commitment government to increase food security. The other strategy, store grain in land strategy. China has set a red line of 120 million hectares. You can change it to non-farming activities. That line. Meantime, try to improve quality of land. We call construction a high standard farmland. And start 400 million hectares, move, it divided by 15 become 1 hectare. So basically by 2030, nearly 100% all land should be high standard farmland with very high productivity land. And per year, you can produce nearly 20 tons of grain for 2 seasons. That is the target government want to go use technology. Then in China, also only one country issued anti-food waste law, grain security law. I think this law just indication if you not doing something not follow food security policy, you are against the law. And that have a give big pressure for local government to invest in agriculture. If you not invest in agriculture, you are against the law. Like we have law for education. Education is 4% of total GDP. If you less than this, you will get out of office because you're against the law. So we need to try to motivate national and local government commit to food security. Sustainability is another one. Is all the big challenge we are facing, and indeed investment in this sector also significant. In China, we call green agricultural development. First started spend about 500 billion. You divide by 7, about 7 become dollar. Transforming 37 million hectares of slopland. Slope more than 25 degrees, transform to the forestry to reduce erosion. The problem. That's a huge investment. Meantime, China will start natural forestry resource protection program by complete stopping commercial loading. Have criticized by some countries that China stop commercial loading and other countries started loading, and we import food, right? But anyway, that is so the government try a commitment to have ecological protection. Ecological compensation program also trying to reduce grazing intensive, also huge investment. And that slowland to forestry to grassland and recently moved to cutting land. China have zero growth plan for chemical use technology, training farmer to reduce chemical fertilizer use, and pesticide use. Indeed, China is #1 fertilizer use, pesticide use, and exciting we see the recently started declining. So according to technology important. Okay, now green ecology, I will quick finish now. And more indeed, national formal policy moved to green ecology start 27. And fourth program I show you just pioneer program, and this is going to whole lunar ecology program. We set up institution first. Second, go to technology, set up guidelines, then to start a program. So institution get it right. And one important movement, most important movement on 2027, China decided ecology become mainstream one. Climate change before the war, because ecology will play food security, and there's going to a number of policies to implement how to not low carbon ecology. So using that, I believe in China government able to solve its key major problem. But let me now get the third part of how comparison China and rural transformation. And left side, I'm sorry, the Philippines also here, the red one here, red one is China. In 1960, I look at this figure, 1960, Philippines per capita income about 6-7 times higher than China. And then now, among the countries studied, that's by IFA, I did it for IFA study, China now is income much faster than many other countries within that for studying Asia. Right sense, side also poverty reduction. Every country poverty reduction is also successfully, but some are different. Then indeed, rural transformation happened in not only China, in all Asian countries. Here's on the whole Asian country moving from crop, from livestock sector. Right side moving into crop, moving from green economy to non-green economy, from vegetable fruit, the other crop. That's happening. But if you look at the country by country, it's very deep. Speed of transformation is different. These three figures of 1980, 1990, and first 10 years of this century, a percentage of high value agriculture that non-senior product. Unfortunately, Philippines doesn't change much. But I didn't update that until now. I heard it in the same 10 years, Philippines take also increasing non-senior grain production. And this figure, I can create per each country per year how much it changes from senior grain economy to high value agriculture. That's original one. Annual change in share of gross value of non-senior product. What you find is poverty reduction. It's no down. But I put this one in table later. And I also look at the conversion of share of agriculture GDP and improving Asia. That's what we also see the structural formation also different a lot among countries in Asia. Using that figure, I also draw. Original one is speed of structural formation from agriculture to non-agriculture, vertical and poverty reduction. You see slope go down. Then if country faster structural formation, faster poverty reduction because of the increase of our employment. And put in these two figures. I put in the two indicators now. Non-agriculture, non-green economy growth, non-structural information. within a country, if faster transformation, faster rural transformation, they get a faster poverty reduction. In the per capita income, we see the faster growth of income. And the right side and there's empathy. If you are faster transformation in two dimensions, you never get slow growth in economy. Never care about the poverty reduction problem. But in the bottom one, unfortunately, maybe I think I put the right place. Philippines, Pakistan, Bangladesh was in both slow transformation group, but also interesting. If a country have one of two transformations are fast, they get a moderate development. And also, indeed, I work with IFA project here with Mercy and others, with Vietnam, try to see the top one is the point is Philippines. It's at the regional level. In China, it's county province level. Blue one is Vietnam, and the red one in China. So at the given level of high value ecology, you see like three countries, they are in different level, and that means inclusive of different development among the country. But within each country, we do see which moving to high value ecology. Philippines is reducing poverty reduction in China, and here is Vietnam. So within country, we see the strength split up our high value ecology reducing the poverty reduction. In the meantime, we also see the institution different, inclusive difference in the among personal and level are different among the country. And we also working on farm rural transformation in three countries. Here is the Philippines, and second is this is China, this is Vietnam. But I think here again, just to emphasize importing our rural transformation, moving into high value, importing our rural transformation. What going on here? I'm finishing. Okay, the last cue. Importing our transformation from agricultural to non-agricultural sector. The different line that gap is in the institution different between the country. We also look at Bangladesh, China, Indonesia, Pakistan by provincial level. I think we get similar conclusion. I don't have time to go detail, but just also this, we do see the China is red to blue. And Indonesia now moved to the third stage, and Bangladesh now it started third stage of transformation. Pakistan is now in the third stage of transformation. So we saw the speed of transformation are different among countries, but every country are moving in this direction, and that's important. Then we also a number of paper empirical to show faster rural transformation, faster income growth, and also faster poverty reduction. Same everything we get from China empirical study. There's also evidence of importance of IPI institution policy investment to facilitate inclusive rural transformation. Okay, then now it's last concluding. First, facilitating rural transformation and structural formation, labor intensive, high value agricultural transformation is very, very important. High value agricultural compared green economy, you in China, people working 20 days maximum. 15 to 20 days. High value agriculture working 300 days, intensive working. Meantime, with produce increase, and then we move out of agriculture. Labor intensive economic transformation should be implemented before rising wage. Second, I also most important point is private institutions, policy investment matter. In each stage of development, you need to have set up new institution which policy and investment which help you move to second stage or next stage, not help you move to last stage. You go too fast. I think Philippines go too fast in 1969, 70 institution, everything, then you weren't able to move. When you climb up, you're falling down, you never able to get up. And also otherwise many developing countries, each region, I said, which you look at the past of stage, then each region, which state you are in. If in third state, you done working on third state, moving to fourth state. What the most important institution, policy investment, help you move to third state to fourth state. That is most important. So I call the sequencing of IPI. It's critical to speed up agricultural productivity growth, rural transformation, population reduction, and income growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ji-kun. We know where China is right now, but I think everybody will agree that as we were listening to Ji-kun's presentation, we cannot help but be in awe with the positive transformation that China undertook. And of course, the major architect of this positive transformation is no less than Ji-kun Huang himself, a product of UPLB and of course, favorite student of Tina David. Okay, so it's now time for the Q&A. So I'm sure most of you would have questions. Okay, Jim is the self-assigned first to ask question.
Maha assigned me to get things started. So there's this age-old controversy in development economics, starting perhaps with Faye Rannis. There's the idea that agriculture is inherently inefficient with very low productivity labor, and structural transformation is the job of government to protect industry and subsidize the transformation to pull those bad resources or those unproductive resources into the productive sector. And the other view, starting with Jorgensen, was that no, it's really angle effect on demand, human and capital accumulation, innovation, and so that the job of government is to get out of the way and let these forces work. So, of course, I want you to comment on this, but it seems like your view is, well, you're more on the latter school, but then you're saying government needs to facilitate some things because of externalities, public goods. So the government needs to facilitate irrigation, R&D, and maybe some coordination of investments, those kind of things. So could you just comment on where you come down and all that?
Yeah, I think when we talk about developing economy, we can get to very early many different arguments. I think the China government, I think the opinion or view thinking on agriculture is very important implication for other countries. They consider agriculture is based on economy. When agriculture, China government also believe as Melon and others said, Johnson said that agriculture growth 1% can help the economy grow to 2 to 3% because agriculture of processing, agriculture marketing, transportation, and food processing. So really government consider agriculture growth 1% is not 1% itself. Agriculture growth can help economic growth more faster because multiple function of effect on this culture. Second, China, I think there are a lot of marketing failure issues. But when we move to diversification, when I visited in Africa, Tanzania, Ethiopia, we Chinese local farmer to grow some more cassava and product. And the first year, okay, second year, and they stop. He said, I can't sell my cassava because if too much cassava, I have no place to store it, no place to sell, no people to come to pick up. So I think a market failure it's a very big failure when started diversification commercialization. And then that's why we need the government coming to have a huge investment in the road infrastructure, make commodity moving one place to the other place. Need to set up, we get a loan, also World Bank and also other local government raising funding to have wholesale market, big one, maybe only but can help local farmer have selling the product. Of course, in this initial investment in node infrastructure, particularly in marketing infrastructure, you start government, and later they get refunded because you have a market, one counter, you can receive rental payment, then expanded. I think over time, again, Jim, important point, in every state, there always market failure, or market cannot do much better, need the government to get it in. Let me say also, like offer employment. If we're waiting for structural formation in urban area, we need another institutional reform for people moving one place to the other place. And at that time, a government supporting the industry, we need farmer, you invest in the township to have your own industry. And they get a very, very cheap labor. If you have industry in urban, you per day, if $10, if in rural area, it's $1, $2, you can hire people for part-time farming, no farming. In some, I see that particularly in different countries, when transforming from one state to the other state, there are a lot of market failure, a lot of things, infrastructure issues, eternal issues. That need a government investment and to institutional changes, policy changes. Meantime, agriculture also, we know here all agriculture is not industry, agriculture, environment implication, ecological implication, and many implications. Also, many people, poverty is in rural area agriculture. Another, I think, issue that we need the government to play more important in this sector.
All right. Another question, please. Kay. And then Roel. Yes.
Yeah, 𝐿𝐭𝐻𝐿, thank you very much. I'm very impressed with your dynamic presentation. I found a lot of similarities between Japanese agriculture in the past and Chinese agriculture in recent years. So I know what's going to happen in China in future. No. That's just a joke. Not a comment. Like you, I'm concerned with grain security or increasing import of grains. If China continue to increase import of grains, then world grain market will be upset, and grain price will go up, and all the poor people in the world will suffer from that. So we have to stop the increasing import in China. Why is China increasing import? That is because of inefficiency of grain production on small farms. In Japan, if we look at just the weight of grain, wheat, 70%, more than 70% is import. And that is because the small farm sites with a very labor-intensive production method. Only average farm size in Japan is 3.5 hectares. That's too small. In Europe, 50. In the US, maybe 100. We have to expand the farm size to 50 hectares or something. So you mentioned in the case of part-time farmers, farm plus of farming, you mentioned development of local land market is important and land consolidation is important. But that is not included in food production, grain production category. But actually, development of land market and land consolidation are very important for grain production. Why didn't you mention that?
I think I can point out very important point on 2 points. One, food security issue. One is farm size transformation. Indeed, I have a whole lecture on farm China, in China. Food concern about food import, but first, China rice is more than 100% self-sufficiency. Storage is about 100% of production. Too much storage, it's 100% production. So rice is fully self-sufficiency for many years. Rice consumption has declining now over time for 10 years. So I don't think China rice import will increase. China export rice might increase. China wheat is full self-sufficiency, more than also 100% wheat self-sufficiency. China wheat yield is twice as U.S. wheat yield per hectare. So yield are wheat still increasing. So wheat consumption in China also start declining by production going up. Our wheat storage is around 90% of whole production. Total storage because too much production. So I don't think rice we have problem. China made import at about 10%. That's we are like 50. So major import is not made in the soybean. And all other 100 commodities put together, it's only maybe only 5,000. It's in 1/3 of soybean. So only thing make China insecure is feed grain or the protein grain. We import soybean it's for feed livestock production. So if we, again China anything can help can treat in the global food security is soybean in last percent. Maybe later self-sufficient, maybe later will increase a little bit import, but now huge investment in made research try to increase its yield. GMO made commercialized already in China, and the gene editing made now is another technology going on. So another I believe only thing commodity was soybean. In China, you try to solve soybean import problems through many different kind of diversification. But protein in China, protein feed in China, it's 95% is soybean. So to diversify to rapeseed, to peanut, to others, in terms of production, also in terms of consumption, the huge animal breeding program try to save protein soybean consumption. They believe a new breeding program on animal, on livestock can save about 50 million metric ton of soybean consumption. But let's say by science, they can within 10 years can so the efficiency of animal breeding, animal feeding can reduce. In some, yes, China is a big country. Even per capita food import in the world is ranked as about I think 80 is not number one. Okay, per capita import is about I think about 5% of Japan per capita import, and about I think 20% of UK import. But the total time 1.4 billion, and it's very big, and it's big, and the bigger one. Only one commodity soybean. Okay, that's for first one. Second, farm side, I don't have time to present here in China. China is a big country. You know? I think we can use every farm side as an indicator. China, every side, okay, farm side 10 years ago, 0.5 hectare, and now it's about 1.5 hectare. It's increasing by 3 times within 10-15 years, but I think this is nothing because South China and North China are very different. Northeast China now is 10 hectare farm. It's a small farm. They grow grain production, maize, wheat, rice production. So if in Northeast China, that's Northeast China about half maize production and another rice production. That if you take 10 hectare, it's a small farm. But if we take 100 hectare, that's okay. It's about it's a bigger farm. So we small farmers in South China, farm size is very small. 3.5 hectares. They are focused in horticulture. If we go to Shandong farmer, it's only 0.8 hectare, and everything I did study there. They go to greenhouse, 0.8 hectare, they can earn a greenhouse, grow 3 seasonal vegetables inside. They earn the income much higher than people go to urban area. So China is big in small farm size, all in South China, and also in South China, they focus on high value agriculture. In Northeast China, and they focus on grain production. You can't find much in horticulture in Northeast China. This diversification is across the region. And then, by the way, there's a big consolidation program in China. I afraid going too fast, moving too big a farm because still many people working in farming. We need to create job for them, and then many providers promoting. They hire one very smart farmer. They consolidate whole vanity land, and then including farmer side. Efficiency is increasing a lot, but year declining. If one farmer, good farmer, they plant 10 hectares a year, can go to 10 towns. They go to 50 hectares a year, because another 10 towns become 8 towns. Imagine, it's falling. So in some, China is moving consolidation by region, different region. For grain production, you have big farm. For high value agriculture, have to be small farmer. They can operate more than 1 hectare for greenhouse, labor intensive production. I believe that trend will continue in the future. I think everything quite follow you said in Japan 10 years or 15 years ago. Only thing this farm side, it doesn't follow Japan, because I think South China will follow Japan, small farm side, go high value in the right production in Japan. But North China, Northeast China, going to bigger farm to do the grain production.
Okay, can we have the last question, Ruel?
So in 2011, I was in Hebei, and then I was able to observe the big celebration all over China for joining the WTO. And I was wondering, hey, in 2005, we never even remembered that it was the 10th year of our accession to the WTO. So I remember that memory because I saw your diversification in agriculture. And I think it's largely a story of globalization, right? The willingness to engage in global markets, and that made Chinese farmers shift to high-value crops and high-value fisheries, no? So I'm at that time, or even in those years, there must have been large policy debate within China whether, we should engage this, give more chance to farmer to earn income, but at the same time, we increase dependence on world market for our food. So isn't that a problem? So that's one, how the policy debate in China and how that ran that course. Number two, it's now reverse. It's now the world afraid of its dependence on China. So wondering whether in the future we can still count on this, the gravy train of globalization, or maybe we have to find some alternative course of development.
Yeah, I think a good question. Yes, more than 25 years ago, I know quite many people on WTO, China entering WTO, and many people are afraid China, if join WTO, China agriculture will be collapse because farm size is too small. In the after joining WTO, China export import go together. Only after 2007, 2008, soybean. By the way, if the usual import export, if you take out soybean commodity, China is net food exporting country. Okay, we are net exporter, only one commodity, soybean. But because China found that soybean in China is not competitive advantage, and the soybean tariff is zero, right? Tariff is almost 1%. You can anytime you can get in. And other rice really made TRQ imported. So China decided to get out, forget one big commodity, and then we focus all 99 commodity sales efficiency. But that's also very risky of one is commodity because soybean has impact on edible oil, the impact on livestock production, and this. But again, if we did not import this soybean, what you agree with China weren't able to move high value cattle. We need, according to we need about 40% new cattle in land just to produce the 100 million tons of soybean. That's impossible. China don't have enough land. And I think this is also why China is very, even agriculture also, we are pushing liberalization, global liberalization. I think it's not only of interest of China, also interest of global agricultural transformation, development issues. And what is the second one? But I think maybe if you interview 100 people, maybe 3%, 4% are afraid of China. I see when I talk with Brazil, Argentina, and many other countries, they are very, very interested in China because they, like 10 years, 15 years ago, I go to Ethiopia. China imports sesame. Sesame is a very small product in China. Right? The whole country start develop. Ethiopia, Tanzania, they become #1 commodity export, #1 in all commodities, not in agriculture. And they export sesame to China, and they have a foreign exchange rate, they can import the industry technology machine. And I think rising China imports provide a lot of opportunity to other countries to agriculture for transformation, for development. If you consider, I think of course some countries consider China as a trade, but I think not many, majority of countries not consider China as an opportunity to working together.
All right. So I think that is all the time we have for this session. So please join me in thanking our two speakers, Professor 𝐀𝐸𝐻𝐿 and Professor 𝐺 Huang. So before we end, may I invite the two speakers for a photo opportunity with the honoree. Dito na lang. Carl, pa-help.
So it will be moderated instead by Dr. Sunny Domingo, who is likewise a colleague, senior research fellow of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and concurrent manager of our research information department. So as we call people, maybe I can also call likewise on Dr. Sunny, please.
Okay, thank you, Roel. Are we all in? So we are now in our closing plenary. Should we start? Okay. Okay, so probably a lot of you would be wondering why I am here compared to the other moderators and presenters. I am the outlier. Why is that? Because I haven't had the pleasure and the privilege to work with Ma'am Tina David. I joined PIDS during the year when Ma'am Tina actually decided to retire 2006. So I was there to admire from afar. And even before joining PIDS, I was with UPLB and Picard for more than a decade. And although I do not know Dr. David personally, her work, her body of work, the impact of those write-ups and policy advocacies were very much felt, both within the circles in UPLB as well as Picard, in all consortium, in all regions. So particularly late in the 90s when we had AFMA, they were scrambling to actually supposedly reinvent their mandate, with BAR getting a lot of resources as well, and having a new network similar to the consortium arrangements of the UST Picard. So that was, I think, also an interesting story back then. But the stories mentioned earlier about Dr. David made me think, because when Ma'am Tina left PIDS, she was actually replaced by Roel. And hearing the work, the body of work of Ma'am Tina actually made me realize that Roel's work right now is very much an extension of what you've been doing before. So kudos to you guys. Okay, so with that brief introduction, while waiting for the others to join us. Again, I'm Sonny Domingo, and I'll be your moderator for this closing plenary. So we'll have 3 presentations, and with your permission, I'll start introducing our first speaker. Let me just find first. Sorry for my misplaced notes. Okay, so our first speaker will be joining us online. He is Dr. Justin Lin, Professor and Dean of Peking University. So Professor Justin Yifu Lin is Dean of the Institute of New Structural Economics and Honorary Dean of the National School of Development at Peking University. He founded the China Center for Economic Research in 1994 and served as its first director, appointed as the World Bank's chief economist and senior vice president in 2008. He was the first person from a developing country to hold this role. Professor Lin has authored over 20 books and 300 papers on economic development, including Demystifying the Chinese Economy and New Structural Economics. He is also a member of multiple high-level policy and academic communities. Without further ado, Dr. Justin Lin, please. You may start your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Tina David, friends, and ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's a true honor for me to be able to participate in this special event in honor of Dr. David David and Tina David. And Tina is a good friend of us and also a mentor to many of us doing agricultural economics in China. And I have known her more than 35 years. And I would very much like to join this special event in person. But you know, I'm still actively teaching. I taught this morning for 3 hours. And in this evening, I have another course, 3 hours. And because of that, I could not be away from Beijing. But luckily, due to the modern technology, I can participate own lines. And today I'd like to talk. The topic is rural revitalization in China. And I want to present this from the perspective of new structural economics, which I advocate in recent years. As you know, China was one of the poorest countries in the world before the transition from a socialist planning economy to a market economy in 1978. At that time, China was one of the poorest countries in the world. Its per capita GDP in 1978 was only 156 US dollars. And it was less than 1/3 of the average of 495 US dollars in a country of sub-Saharan Africa. Like other poor countries, most people living in agriculture. At that time, 81% of the population rely on agriculture for living. And the reform, the transition in China started in the rural sectors. The collective production team was replaced by the household farming system called household responsibility system. And that reform greatly improved the incentive of farmers. And so farm output increased rapidly. And the income in rural areas also increased quickly. And so it was a very successful reform. And to some extent, the reform is still the most successful reform that we have in China. And encouraged by this rural reform, the Chinese government extended the market-oriented reform from rural area to urban areas after 1985. And overall, this transition was very successful. And you know that in the past 45 years, from 1978 to 2023, the average annual growth rate was 8.9% per year, continuously for 45 years. And certainly, the income level in China increased quickly. Last year, the per capita GDP in China was 12,700 US dollars, very close to the threshold of a high-income country. Currently, the threshold of a high-income country is 14,000 US dollars. But I'm very confident China will be able to cross that threshold in 2 or 3 years. And by that time, the population in the world living in high-income country will be more than doubles. Because so far, only 1.2 billion population live in high-income country. And China has 1.4 billion population. So once China become a high-income country, the people living in high-income country will be more than double. And with this success, there is one drawback. I mentioned before, from the 1978 and to 84, the income in rural area increased very rapidly. So the income gap between urban area and rural area narrowed substantially. But after the reform started in urban areas, although rural income continued to grow, but at a rate much slower than the income increase in the urban areas. And so the gap of income, the urban-rural gap, was widened continuously. And it became a problem. And the Chinese government's hope was to achieve common prosperity. It's a target. The hope will be realized. Because we know that in the modernization process, most countries, they encounter the issue of disparity in income among the rich and the rest of the population. And China wants to avoid that. So the Chinese government proposed the idea of common prosperity. Hope everyone will become prosperous. And the income gap will be reduced. And to achieve that, the Chinese government proposed the rural revitalization strategy in 2017 at the 19th Party Congress. And I'd like to use this opportunity to explain to you what is the idea of rural revitalization strategy. And then I'd like to discuss how to achieve that strategy successfully. The rural revitalization strategies was adopted in 2017 with 5 dimensions. The first dimension is to have a very dynamic rural production sectors. Rural production sectors, certainly that including agriculture and possibly also manufacturing, also service sectors. And to have a very dynamic production sectors in rural areas. In Chinese, we say 产业兴旺. All the sectors are very dynamic. The second dimension is to have livable ecological environment in rural areas. To make a living environment in rural area attractive to rural people, and not only so, could also be attractive to urban people. The third dimension is to have a very civilized way of living, the so-called rural civilization. People to have a very harmonious social relations, to have good manner, good relation in rural areas. And the fourth dimension is to have effective governance. The government will be effective to handle all the challenges, providing public good education, and to have a harmonious relation between the people and the government. And the last one is to have a prosperous life for the rural people. Those are the 5 dimensions in this rural revitalization strategies. Certainly, each one of those 5 dimensions is very desirable. But Chinese government want to achieve 5 of that, all of them simultaneously. So the issue is how to achieve that. Every one of them. And from the new structural economics that I'm proposing now, the so-called new structural economics, is to apply the neoclassical approach to study the determinants of structural and structural evolution in the process of economic development. And if we apply the neoclassical approach to study agriculture, then we call that agricultural economics. To study finance, we call that financial economics. And to study structural and structural, evolution, I should refer my study as structural economics. But for someone here, if you study development economics, the first generation of development economics is structuralism. And I want to distinguish my study from structuralism. So I use new structural economics as the brand name for this type of research, just like new institutional economics. The new institutional economics is to apply the neoclassical approach to study institutions. They should call themselves institutional economics, but as you know, in the US at the end of 19th century, early 20th century, they had an institutional school. And I try to make a difference between institutional school and the use of neoclassical approach to study institution. Then they name themselves new institutional economics. So new had the same meaning here. It's a way to distinguish from the old type of study of structure or institution. And certainly I can elaborate about the new structural economics, but the most important ideas of the new structural economics that economic development is a process of structural transformation. And this structural transformation is an endogenous process. And the structure is endogenous to the endowment structure. And if you want to move from low productivity structure, it can be industry or technology, to higher productivity structure, you need to follow the competitive advantages determined by the economies, factor endowments of the economy. That is the basic principle in the new structural economics. And from these ideas, I'd like to analyze how to achieve these 5 dimensions of the rural revitalization strategies. The first one is to have a very dynamic production sectors in rural areas. And the way to make the production sectors, it can be staple food, cash crops, industries, or services like tourism. Those are all possible production sectors in rural areas. And for this, they need to follow the competitive advantages determined by their factor endowments in the rural village or in the rural areas. If they are endowed with abundant arable land, with good education and so on, certainly their competitive advantages will be in the production of staple food, staple grain, like rice or wheat or corn. And if they are close to the city and they also have abundant endowment of labor force, then they may have competitive advantages in cash crops. And in some locations, then it's very limited, but they have a lot of labor force. And then their competitive advantages maybe in labor-intensive manufacturing. And if they have a good scenery, or they have a good historical heritage or cultural heritage, then this location can have competitive advantages in tourism. And if they want to make their production sector to be very dynamic, they need to follow this principle. Because if they develop sector which are consistent with their competitive advantages, they can have most efficient, low cost of production. They can provide a good or service at a competitive cost than any other part of the country. And that is the foundation for dynamic production sectors. And if they follow that, certainly the income can be increased quickly. So by following the competitive advantages, they not only can achieve goal one or dynamic production sectors, they can also have a prosperous livings for their people. And not only so, if the income of the household income of the people increase, certainly they will have a larger demand for good living environment. Because we know environment is very high income elastic. The more income, the more green environment, fresh air, and all those things will require more. So you are going to have higher demand for good living environment. Certainly, if you want to have a good living environment, you need to adopt green technology in production and so on. And that is costly. But if your industries, if your sectors are competitive, you will be profitable. And you will have the means, ability to adopt the green ways of production. And by that, certainly, people can have livable ecological environment. So you can achieve the goal, you can achieve the goal 3, goal 2 simultaneously. Goal 1, goal 5, goal 2 simultaneously. And in China, we have a saying, if you raise the income of the people, then people will become more civilized. We have one saying, when the granaries are full, well, people know etiquette. And also, when they have enough food and clothing, well, they know honor and disgrace. So that means the civilization way of living is a result or improvement in the material life. That is traditional wisdom in China. And it can raise the income of the people. They will be more civilized in their manners, in their ways of social interactions as well. Certainly, if you are, raise the income for the people and they achieve the common prosperities, by that, the social tension in the rural area will be reduced. Because our tension is a result of the conflicts of interest. And if the income of the people raise simultaneously, those kind of social tension will be reduced. And the local government, village government, they will also have more resources to provide the public goods to other people. So by that, the governance will also be effective. So that is the formula from the new structural economics. If we want to be successfully achieve the 5 dimensions of the rural revitalization strategies, we should follow the competitive advantages of each locations. But how can we turn this kind of principle from economics to become a spontaneous choice of entrepreneurs in rural areas? We know that entrepreneurs, no matter they are farmers or they are industrialists, they are profit seeking. How can we make their profit seeking to follow the competitive advantages of their location? For that, I think the market is very important. Especially, we need to have price signals which reflect the relative abundance of their factor endowments in their locations. If you have this kind of price signals, then no matter it's farmers or it's industrialists, from their profit motivation, they will seek into the opportunity to exploit their competitive advantages. And those kind of price signals can only be achieved in an efficient market. So Chinese government need to deepening the market reform to make a market mechanism works well, not only in urban area, should also across the whole country, including in the rural area, to have effective, efficient markets. But only market is insufficient. We are talking about structural transformations. We want to have a dynamic production sectors. They would have to upgrade their technological innovations. And once they are very productive, they are very efficient, they grow very fast, they are going to accumulate their capital very quickly. And they may have to diversify into new sectors because new competitive advantage will emerge all the time. And in this process, structural transformation, there's a lot of market failures. One, you need to have the first movers to take this opportunity. And we know first movers, they will encounter all kinds of externalities. And the government, they need to be compensated for the externality. For example, the first movers may fail. And the failures provide information for other people. This is not the right direction, and other people can avoid the same mistakes. But the first mover would have to incur all the cost of failures. The first mover may also be successful. And the success of the first mover provide the information for other people. Other people will follow competition comes, and the first mover will only earn the average profit like other people. So from this, we know for the first mover, if they failed, they pay all the cost. And if they are successful, they share the benefit with all other people. Unless we provide some incentive to them, otherwise, they will not have the incentive to move the first. Not only so, whether the first mover will be successful or not. On the one hand, the new activity should be consistent with the new competitive advantages, but sometimes new activities require specific infrastructure or specific, other public goods, like whether you have good road network, you have sufficient, water supply, you have, well-educated labor force, and whether the access to finance is available, something like that. For those kind of things, the individual entrepreneur will not be able to handle. So we need to have a local government to help that. Certainly, the local government resources is limited. So the local government need to use their limited resources effectively and targeting new sectors which are consistent with local competitive advantages and to help the entrepreneur to be successful. And so some kind of industrial policy would also be essential. And we need to have the government to facilitate this change. So I think that is the ideal. In a market economy with facilitation state and help local entrepreneur, can be farmer, can be industrialist, to exploit their local competitive advantages, then those 5-dimensional rural revitalization strategies can be successful. But let me conclude before I finish. That is related to the food security, especially grain security. As you know, China is poor endowed with arable land. And China does not have competitive advantages in land-intensive products, especially staple food like wheat, corn, soybean, to some extent, also rice. And I'm advocating that China should follow our competitive advantages. Does not mean China have to reduce the food production and to rely heavily on import of food, especially grain, for our consumption. If we have a good globalization, peaceful globalization, and also expectable globalization, every country follow the economic principle, then that should be desirable. Then income in rural area can further be increased. However, we know there's always a food security issue, grain security issue, especially because of geopolitical tension now we are facing in the world. And so certainly China need to have security in the staple food, especially the wheat, corn, soybean, security for our consumption. But if we want to achieve food security, certainly then the cost of production in those areas will be much higher. And the return of production in those products will be lower than other type of production, cash crop industries or services like tourism and so on. Under that, the Chinese government will have to subsidize farmers to produce those goods. But the subsidization certainly is costly. So I think the way is that China need to balance. On the one hand, to diversify the importation of food, U.S. has competitive advantage in the production of corn or soybean because they have abundant supply of arable land. Ideally, it would be desirable for us to import most of our needs of grain, of wheat, of corn, or soybean from the U.S. But the track record shows grain or food very often been weaponized. Without understanding, the first thing we need to do is to diversify the sources of our importation of those type of food. And to Argentina, Brazil, and possibly also Australia and Canada And we can also consider the possibility of importing grain from Russia, from Ukraine. They have the competitive advantages in those productions. So diversification. And also to ensure certain, sufficient production domestically. And with that balance, I think to rely on the competitive advantages in efficient market with a facilitation state will be the right way for China to achieve its common prosperity for the whole nation, including in the rural areas, and those 5 dimensions of revitalization in rural area will be achieved. So let me stop here. Thank you very much. And I'm so delighted to see Tina in front of the screen. So thank you very much.
A big round of. Thank you very much, Justine, for that very interesting presentation. I think we've heard 2 complementary presentations on China's remarkable development. So later on during the open forum, we'll have the opportunity to relate those presentations with each other, as well as China's development to what we are experiencing in the Philippines. Okay, so for our next presentation on the paper on sure policy, we have 2 presenters. Our first, well, I'll be introducing both of them. The first presenter was already introduced earlier. We have Dr. Carl Robert Handok, Associate Professor, Department Chair, UP School of Economics of the University of the Philippines. And our second presenter is Dr. James Romaset, Professor of Economics, University of Hawaii. James is a Professor Emeritus at the University of Hawaii with a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His research interests include ecological resource economics, energy economics, institutional economics, and development microeconomics. He has previously held positions at UC Davis, the University of the Philippines, ANU, Yale, the University of Maryland, the Agricultural Development Council, the International Rice Research Institute, and the World Bank. So a great list right there. He has served on the board of directors of several journals. With those introductions, let me call on Carl. Oh, okay. Jim to make the first presentation.
Let's see, you might as well show the first slide. Well, I'll just talk anyway. It's truly an honor to be one of the chapter authors among this august group of authors. These have been very impressive presentations so far. I first met Tina in January of 1972, I think it was, when I was a pre-doc at Erie, and Randy Barker assigned me to share an office with Tina. So despite the invasion, we became friends. I remember us being more friends than boyfriends or girlfriends, but given my age, I can't be sure. So, let's get on with it. Can I control this? Not really. Can you switch to the next slide? Okay, go right, right and left. Oops.
Okay, there you go.
Salamat. How far did we go? So back in the day, when you look at agricultural policy, you see things like studying the production function and what's the output elasticity of fertilizer. If it's high, 10 or 15%, let's say, it means you should subsidize fertilizer. So you can kind of see this is disconnected from public economics, which tries to get you to understand the consequences of any particular policy. So that was the gap that we sort of saw. And this gave rise to what we call the nature, causes, and consequences paradigm, which I hope I can get across to you. So this is something that Tina and John Power and I did in about 1980, 81. Came up with this paradigm, starting with the nature. So when you ask people to study policy, I mean, you think of asking students, what do? They go to the internet and find all the laws and regulations of a particular regulatory agency. It doesn't tell you very much. It's more like propaganda. So what you need is a metric. And we've already heard about nominal protection rates. And this was something that we heard that John and Tina were working on already in the 60s. So it's a metric that summarizes what really is the agricultural policy in a way that leads to useful analysis. So in the famous book, Bautista and Power, they provided the nominal protection rates for several industries, but also said, well, you need effective protection rates because that's kind of an indicator of consequences. The effective protection rate tells you how much is the value-added portion of the good, which is what matters, that's the part produced domestically. How much is that protected? So if it's high, resources are going to flow in. If it's low, it's hard to build that industry. The other kind of indicator of consequences was domestic resource cost. So that tells you kind of at the average or at the margin, how much is this costing you to produce another unit of that good? Well, as Ann Kruger pointed out in a JPE article, that's really a reflection of protection rates, because if you protect a good, you just go up the supply curve and then the costs are higher. So we really need another metric of consequences that can be quantified. It's useful to indicate what will happen, but it's nice to quantify. So that's what we're going to try to do here. Now, sometimes you can do that with partial equilibrium. In Claretti's case, he did it with general equilibrium. And the third part is, well, if you're going to recommend policy reforms, you should understand what they're doing there. What are the causes of those policies in the first place, the political causes? And as Balisakan pioneered in his dissertation, this is a matter of understanding the investment by various special interest groups and the interaction between those special interest groups to determine who's going to win. And that's why that kind of analysis can tell you why, as a country gets richer, they tend to protect their agriculture more and more. So we're trying to apply this paradigm to sugar in the Philippines. So just a little bit of background, you probably know all this. The sugar cane is processed by a centrifuge, take out the molasses, wash it and wash the crystals and filter it and get it to various degrees of raw sugar or refined sugar. We don't directly observe the farm gate prices, which makes the measuring the metric of protection that farmers receive a little difficult, because under the Cadan system,
Recording in
the price
progress.
is highest in domestic. I'd like to be classified as domestic, but it's maybe not up to me. So everything in economics starts with supply and demand. So if we allow the world price to persist, then you just go down the demand curve that determines the quantity, and the deficit between production and consumption is made up by imports. But instead, the government sets a quota, driving up the price. Now, one of the remarkable things to me about sugar is that sometimes the government mandates exports, which you can see further shifts the supply curve back and raises the price. So why in the world would an importing country impose a sugar export mandate? Very strange. Now, of course, this year they're not imposing it. Okay. You know what? Because we're short of time, I'm going to let Carl explain the implicit tariff, which measures the penalty to consumers, how much extra they're paying. And we don't just need one domestic price, as you'll see. That protection, that penalty, is not passed on to farmers because of inefficiencies in the marketing system. So we need a different metric to measure protection of farmers. And let's have Carl present that. Can I just stay here?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know where I am right now. Oh, here. So in the interest of time, well, here we just see that prices are high over here. Which is like Thailand, it's 25 to 30. So consumers are screwed there, and therefore their consumption has been declining over the past 10 years. But in what really interests us in describing the nature of the sugar policy is computing both the implicit tariff and the nominal protection rate. So in this exercise, we attempt to compute the implicit tariff. So the first step in computing the implicit tariff is to compute what we call the free trade price. So the free trade price is obtained by tacking on the world price over here, the different cost associated with bringing that sugar to the wholesale level in Metro Manila. So we have the cost of freight, the port, the transportation, and when we computed it, we arrive at a free trade price of 39.81 pesos. Now, consumers in Metro Manila pay wholesale price of 87.41 pesos. So that difference in percentage terms, which is 119%, is our measure of implicit tariff. So this measures how consumers are penalized in terms of the prices that they pay above the free trade price if they brought it in through trade. On the other hand, the nominal protection rate likewise starts from the mill site, and we try to gross up that price to the same marketing point, which is Metro Manila wholesale. So we start with a mill site price of 63.55 and then tack on the cost of milling, refining, and trading until we go to the same marketing point. And grossing up would bring us to a wholesale price of 78.45. Now, at different points, there are inefficiencies here. So we want to compare what the efficient gross up wholesale price is with the free trade price. So what we did was to assume that our marketing margins were as efficient as Thailand. So instead of 78.45, the farmers receive, if they were efficient, 72.31 pesos from the mill site price of 63.55. Now, this 72.31 pesos is 82% above the free trade price, which is 39 pesos, which we saw earlier. So just to summarize, here, iba pala yung computer, iba pala yung ano. Sorry. So this is the summary of what we have computed earlier. So the average mill side price in Negros Occidental is 63. And when we computed the gross up wholesale price, the efficient gross up wholesale price, the farmers or the producers receive 72.31. Metro Manila consumers pay wholesale 87.41, but the free trade price is 39.81%. So we calculated, like we said, the implicit tariff to be about 120% and the nominal protection rate of 82%. Now, if we take the ratio of the nominal protection rate and the implicit tariff, we have 68%, which means that the penalty that consumers face in paying a higher price, only 68% of that is enjoyed by the producers. So the increase in consumer prices resulting from the trade restrictions is captured by other things such as inefficiencies, excess profits that raise cost. So what we did, sorry about that. So what we did is to examine the consequence of such policies in a supply and demand framework. Jim loves to do that. For those of you who are students of Jim, you really have to memorize your supply and demand graph. Now, after 10 years, I think I finally got it. So here we summarize the information that we have. This 39.81 pesos over here is the free trade price. The 72.31 is the gross up wholesale price. And the 87.41 is the current Metro Manila, or the 2022 wholesale price in Metro Manila. So by the way, we computed the supply and demand graphs using elasticities from various sources. And what we see is that if global markets were well integrated and we are free to trade, that import quota or that import requirement can be substituted by a tariff, which is just the intersection of this red supply curve with the demand curve over here, which is 84.81 pesos. This 84.8 pesos over here is around 113% above the free trade price of 39.81 pesos. So our quota can be mimicked, so to speak, by a tariff of 113%. Now notice that even with that 113% tariff, the price there will be lower than what the Metro Manila consumers pay on wholesale. So when we take advantage of imports, we just pay 84.8, but Metro Manila consumers pay 87.1. So that difference is actually like a tax on consumers, okay? And that tax revenue, when we tax those consumers, is equal to this pink line over here, which is 2.52 billion pesos. And when we have trade over here and IT is equal to NPR over this price over here, well, practically consumers are protected by 113% tariff rate. But with the current policies of a quota, the farmers only enjoy around 82% tariff rate, 82% nominal protection rate. And so they are penalized. It's as if you are taxing the producers this much. And when you tax the producers this much, the foregone revenue from the tax is equal to this green rectangle over here, which we compute to be 2.9 billion pesos. Of course, when you tarify, you earn tariff revenue, which is equal to this purple area over here, which we compute to be around 32.7 billion pesos. And there are further costs, okay? So raising these revenues from auctioning the quotas, from taxing consumers, 7.48 billion. And then finally, we have the deadweight losses for the consumers and producers and consumers. So we compute that to be around 10 billion. So the total cost that we computed is around 60 billion pesos. Add to that the cost of SRA's budget, which is around 1 billion pesos. So we see here that the current trade restrictions trade restrictions cost the economy around 60 to 61 billion pesos a year, which is just above $1 billion in 2022. Oh, Jim, do you want to?
Okay, so the question now is, where does the waste go? So part of it is rents. There was a slide in there we skipped over that shows how the SRA selects the people that get import licenses, and that's an enormous gift. If you get a license, you get to buy low and sell high. So as Ann Kruger said, part of that rent is dissipated because you have to lobby the government to get the license, but not all of it is dissipated. Some of it goes to the license holders, and part of it goes to high profits, uncompetitive forces, and other inefficiencies. So we don't know the breakdown. I don't need this, right? So what are the causes? So of course, those rent-seeking forces are promoting exactly those policies because they get the benefits. And another reason is that the rationale sounds plausible. You hear this language like government has to balance supply and demand in order to stabilize prices, which in economics doesn't make any sense, but somehow it sounds true to some people. So that's the hand-picked Another reason is actually Raul suggested this, is the land reform has very negative consequences. Production has gone down by a lot. Farm size has gone down by a lot. We're losing economies of scale. In the old hacienda system, there's tremendous amount of specialization, different workers for different tasks, and even specialized motor pool. So you have your own mechanics. So a tremendous amount of specialization. If you go to small size, you lose all of that. So it's possible that the industry suffered so much from land reform that politicians decided it was a good idea to compensate by some sort of protection program. Of course, protection only partially filters through. Another unintended consequence of land reform is that in order to escape land reform, just like people do tax avoidance, you do land reform avoidance and say, well, I'm not a sugar producer anymore, I'm putting up a solar farm. So you can keep the land and put up solar farm even without transmission. So it's a case of build it and they will transmit. So then they lobbied the government to transmit the electricity. So in conclusion, Philippine market is highly distorted. Consumers are paying 100%, 120% penalty. Remember in the rice tariffication days, we're talking about 40 to 50% implicit tariff. This is way, way higher. And much of that is not passed on. The estimate that Carl was giving is upper bound because Negros prices are high and because we're using the mill site prices instead of farm gate prices. So even less protection is passed on to farmers. High welfare costs. And something that's under-researched is what's the connection between liberalization and those marketing inefficiencies? Pai Moya, who's here, along with David Daw, did this wonderful study where they showed that the margins from farm gate to wholesale in the Philippines are 3 times that in Thailand. So enormous amount of marketing inefficiency, and the question arises, does liberalization, to what extent does liberalization help competition? Probably you need both, liberalization and some competition policy along with it. So I think I will stop there. Oh, there's all those references, including Tina David is up there too.
Okay, Carl. Okay. So thank you very much, Carl and Jim. I think we'll start our open forum. So may we request you guys to occupy the seats in front. And for for Justine to be back online on your screen. I think we've heard. Okay, do you prefer to just sit there, or do you want to occupy the seats? You can never have too much exposure. I think we've heard very interesting presentations, and in a way, also disconcerting, particularly the last few slides we've seen from the presentations of Carl and Jim. One particular item there, I'll start before I ask the group for questions. One particular item that caught my attention was the was Jim actually referring to rent-seeking forces promoting false policy in government? So would something like this equate to regulatory capture within government, within our institutions in the bureaucracy? So that's probably something to start the ball rolling.
Well, Balisakhan law is that the rent-seeking beneficiaries are few and get large gains. And the opponents, the losers, taxpayers and consumers, are many with individually small gains, even though in aggregate, I mean small losses, but even though in aggregate they have very large losses. So the interest groups, the opponents lose out against the rent-seeking, and you can analyze how those forces change with development of the country. But,
and probably changes in the political landscape as well. So yes, please. Reniel, please assist.
Fermin Adriano. Actually, I took it that we have already encountered that problem, and I was Undersecretary for Policy and Planning. There is no mystery, and all the things that you've said, I can validate there through the calculations that we've done in terms of the prices in Thailand and the landed cost here and the amount. That has been extensively discussed in the economic development cluster during the previous administration. And yet, the problem really is the difficulty in terms of changing the sugar policy, because it seems that the powerful vested interests are entrenched already. When I already talked to people who are capable of countering that, like our food processing industry, including the soft drink industry. Unfortunately, they would rather settle for accommodation rather than really, a collision course with them. And so the solution that they were able to achieve was that, okay, if we can buy it at 70 pesos, then we will keep quiet, something like that. It's an accommodation among the elites. And I think the main lessons that I learned from that is that the political economy of the agricultural sector in the country has nothing to do with the different stakeholders, has nothing to do with attaining the common good. It's basically to each his own. So if I get concessions from the department, if I'm the rice sector, that's well and good. I don't care about what happened to corn or what happened to sugar. If the sugar people get concession, I don't care about the rest. So it's a politics really of accommodation among them. And that's the reason for the difficulty in pushing, despite the knowledge, despite the harm it's being done, particularly to the downstream industries, because even your native delicacies, even your coffee, they're all affected. And we tried to mobilize and organize them. Now, it's extremely difficult. This block is so entrenched in our politics, in our history, that I don't know whether we can really push it despite all the studies that we have, powerful ammunitions that we have. Thank you. That's my comment.
Sonny, is
Would
this
you like
being
to
recorded?
respond to that?
Is this being recorded or?
Yeah, this closing plenary is actually
Okay. So I
being
would
live
ask the
streamed.
sensitive. But okay. So is it
It
streamed
is.
or something? Because I want to ask Fermin, because whenever we talk to DA officials, they would say every 5 minutes, please don't quote us on this, don't quote me on this. So I was just wondering about those special interest groups, Fermin, that you were talking about. Why wouldn't, say, the big beverage producers, say, lobby for for the license to import themselves. That would increase the number of players who would want to import, and then and the second question. This is a reverse Q&A. I'm asking, but the second question
Please go
is:
ahead.
Are these coalitions? Are these importers? Are they the same every administration, or do they change?
They're practically the same. They're millers and importers at the same time. Just like what you see in the rice industry. They are millers and at the same time traders. So they can really control the supply. And that's the reason why I actually coined the word state-sponsored cartel, which is actually what is happening right now. And during the last 400,000 metric tons, it was just allotted to so-called the 3 best and experienced traders. Yeah, we were debating during, but it's extremely difficult because they can hit you somewhere else. Even I talked to some of the food processing. They said they would rather seek an accommodation rather than confront them. And that's the accommodation is that if you could lower prices to us, then we wouldn't care whether you will hit the consumers or not. To each his own, it's basically like that. That's the way it operates.
But why wouldn't they say lobby for government for them to import the sugar themselves?
Yeah, they did. They did. Actually, we wanted to have a quota allocation for them that was raised in the development class economy. But again, it was blocked by some politicians. And we also introduced the idea of why don't we auction it? Yeah. That's the best way. Every commodity that we import, we auction it, from fish, rice, or whatever it is. But it's continuously blocked by some powerful guys there.
Well, very interesting exchanges. Probably we should ask Dr. Fermin to join the panel in front. Well, that is coming from somebody who's been with government. So I guess a very good input, this exchange. Yes, Jim, please.
Yeah, just to add to that, one hopeful note, if you remember the famous white paper produced by UP that helped to lead to the People's Revolution, sometimes things change. Now, what was the essence of the white paper is pointing out the consequences on. But once you show that the consequences were lowering the price to farmers and raising the price to consumers, then people kind of get the idea that this is not working for us.
Okay, so more questions from the group? Yes, Roel, please.
Yes, this is a question for Professor Lin. So I've been following this new structural economics as a student of economics for quite some time. And I do appreciate being able to combine neoclassical. One of the issues that has been pointed out is the comparative advantage framework analyzing this. Position on the basis of current comparative framework accommodates the fact that there should be this enterprising group of innovators that can jump ahead and think ahead of dynamic opportunities in comparative advantage, rather than just looking at the static resource indicated resource allocation that we see today.
Justin, you are on mute.
Well, thank you very much. Just a very key question. for understanding new structural economics. To new structural economics, competitive advantages is endogenous. Endogenous to the factor endowments. If you have abundant supply with labor force, your competitive advantage will be in labor-intensive sectors, labor-intensive technology. And if you are abundant in land resources, land-intensive sectors, technology will be your competitive advantages. That is the starting point. That is the only starting point. But once you follow your competitive advantage in a market economy with a facilitation state, you will be so competitive. You're going to grow so fast. And you can accumulate capital quickly. Once you accumulate your capital, your factor endowment changes. Now you increasingly to become abundant in capital and less abundant in labor force or land resources. By that, the competitive advantages you have now will become your competitive disadvantages. And that will drive the momentum for technological innovation to more capital-intensive technology and move up to more capital-intensive sectors. And that will give the best way to achieve dynamic economic growth. And it's not static. It's unfortunately currently in the literature trade, in general, they treat competitive advantages as static. And once you follow your competitive advantage, you will be trapped, but you have not. And I think it's a totally misunderstanding about the nature of the endogeneity of competitive advantages. But in this process, what is the role of entrepreneur or what's the role of research? Certainly, entrepreneur, they are profit seeking. As I mentioned, if they follow the existing competitive advantage, they are profitable, they accumulate capitals. And they will understand now they have more capitals, they can apply more capital-intensive technology, and they will have the ability to go to more capital-intensive industries. In this process, certainly, you need to acquire better technology. And the acquisition of better technology, there are two ways. For us, as a developing country, in the catching up process, new technology in the world. You can buy better technological here. Under the kind of situation, certainly you cannot import technology, you cannot borrow technology. Then you need to do research, R&D for new technology. But we know that R&D is very expensive, require a lot of capital and very risky, unless you are well equipped with capitals. Otherwise, you will never be able to do that successfully. So by this, with the understanding of the endogeneity of structure, endogeneity of the technology to the endowment structure, you can see the dynamic pattern will be driven by relying on competitive advantage now in a market with efficient government, and you can accumulate capital quickly to change your competitive advantages.
Okay, thank you for that response. Maybe two more questions from the floor before we close this plenary. Probably another item that caught my attention was the supply and demand graph, the shift in supply. It mimics somehow a reverse efficiency in terms of productivity, or the reverse of a farmer or a farming operator being more efficient in terms of his farming. Is that a valid observation, that shift in supply curve?
The shift we were showing there was only to show that, first of all, you're limiting imports. So when you take the domestic supply and add the quota, it's not enough imports. But then to compound that, you say, well, you have to subtract from domestic supply and export, even though it's a lower price. Why would you want to export? It's a penalty. Now, it's interesting right now that the government has announced, even though there's no mandatory exports, there's a resumption of voluntary exports. Now, the question is why anyone would want to export, because it's a lower price. So I think the answer is that, and they kind of hinted at this, that they're going to give people import license if they export. So just an amazing mismatch of policies.
So another distortion in incentives.
The farmer productivity, that would be added on to the graph, because then you would say, because of land reform and other things, productivity is going down. Now the curve is shifting even farther. We didn't show that part.
So it's worse. Okay, so one final question, if there is any from the floor. Yes, well, again.
So even the rate of assistance, protection rates, and implicit tariffs, they're all dependent on using border price. But if you talk to typical lobby groups, they will say that border price is a fake price. That's a dump price distorted by all of these rich country subsidies. So we reject all of your policy measures because the real price is the price we have now. That is the better undistorted price, and we should work to maintain that. How would you address that kind of argument?
So the world price is the world price. How it gets there, we don't know, but Philippines is a small country, so you're price takers of the world price. So yes, there's a lot of international distortions in the world price. It's still the world price from the Philippines' point of view, so you should take advantage of it. And its potential welfare gain, not even to mention food security and inflation reduction, grab those welfare gains. It's in the Philippine Constitution. You're supposed to promote the common good. That's welfare to an economist.
So, Ruel, that's exactly the same comment that I had when I presented this in Bangkok last week. So the reactor was someone from Thailand, and I just said that close to Jim's point is that that's the world price. The Filipinos should be thanking the Thai taxpayers for distorting, for lowering their export prices. But my analogy is like, all these countries are like parents fighting and trying to give gifts to their children to curry their favor. So us being the children will just accept it. So it's a boon for us. And admittedly, there are distortions out there. And his point actually was to recompute all these implicit tariffs using that undistorted world price, but we'll try to think of how to do it.
Okay. I guess this is a very interesting turn in terms of the exchanges. And what's good is probably there are more entry points for intervention for you guys as researchers as well as decision makers in government. So that's the positive. And with that, I think we close our closing plenary session. And we now go to our closing remarks. Now, the closing remarks, as mentioned by Roel earlier, will be delivered by him because our president right now is in Congress, working to have our budget for next year at acceptable levels. So I guess also Roel is very apt in terms of the replacement of our president as the one to deliver the closing speech. Roel, please.
So don't read anything into this, the fact that I'm delivering on behalf of the PIDS president. So closing remarks of President Aniceto Orbeta Jr. Good afternoon, distinguished partners, guests, and friends joining us here at Asian Development Bank headquarters, as well as those participating via Zoom and watching live on Facebook. I would like to begin with heartfelt thanks to our partners in the ADB, the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, SEARCA, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Congratulations on the successful conduct of this conference. I would also like to extend my appreciation to our friends in the media. Your efforts help bring this discourse to the wider public and to organizations that can use this knowledge for the greater good. Today's discussions have given us much to consider in transforming the agricultural sector, managing natural resources in times of crisis, and supporting the sustainable development of our agriculture and thus our nation. Recent global food market shocks have tested the resilience of our agricultural sector, and it is clear that we must do more to aid our farmers and fisher folk. In a 2023 PIDS discussion paper titled, "Will Food Be Affordable to Filipinos by 2030? Alternative Expenditure Policies Toward Ending Hunger by 2030, authors stress the importance of long-term investments in productivity and economic growth to address malnutrition and end hunger among Filipinos by 2030. They emphasize that focusing on general services like research and development and infrastructure can drive lasting improvements in food production and affordability. These insights remind us that achieving food security and resilience in agriculture requires a proactive and sustained approach. As our colleagues have pointed out, there is opportunity and urgency to supplement our agricultural development with technology to ease the burden on our farmers and fiscal policies that allow farmers to access more resources for livelihood. We must continue to explore ways to support our farmers and fisherfolk while promoting sustainability and good governance. Agriculture is the heart of production, and its developments will be felt across sectors. A population with stable access to resources for daily survival is empowered to become a productive workforce that can take care of itself and their economy. This is the part of what we emphasized in the recent Development Policy Research Month, which we celebrated just this September. Empowering our farmers and fisherfolk and ensuring access to food and water are among our sustainable development goals, and it will bring us closer to realizing our ambition of a prosperous life for every Filipino. I thank and congratulate our distinguished presenters whose timely insights and recommendations on the country's agricultural development have shown us that we are on the right track to overcome these challenges and maintain our momentum for growth. My commendations to Dr. 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜𝐮𝐥𝐭 of Kobe University, Dr. 𝐺 Huang of the China Center for Agricultural Policy, Dr. Mario Lamberte of the UP Public Administration Research and Extension Services Foundation, Inc., Dr. Shalito Habito of Brain Trust, Inc., Dr. Arlene Inocencio of the School of Economics of De La Salle, Dr. Lourdes Adriano and Fermin Adriano from the Asian Development Bank, Dr. Liborio Cabanilla of the College of Economics and Management of UPLB, Dr. Justin Lin of Peking University, Dr. Jim Romaset of the University of Hawaii, Dr. 𝐀𝐼𝐿 also of UP School of Economics, and our very own Dr. Ruelano Briones of the PIDS. Special thanks as well to our moderators. Thank you so much. You saved this conference. Dr. Maha Ravago of the Development Academy of the Philippines. Oh, ito pala. This is how Dr. 𝐀𝐼𝐿 was mentioned, UP School of Economics. And Ms. Pai Moya, who was the moderator of the parallel session on the other room of the International Rice Research Institute. All of your work has helped us understand that these crises are calls to action for us to look into how we can strengthen our agricultural sector for a truly resilient Filipino peoples. And of course, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Cristina David. I have known Tina for a long time, as we were colleagues at PIDS, which I joined in 1992, and earlier than that, from her papers, which were and are required reading in graduate school. I had also started out in an agriculture-adjacent field of rural finance with Bruce Tolentino and Gilberto Llanto, who constantly cited Tina's papers, though I would subsequently branch out to education, employment, and impact evaluation. Nonetheless, Tina's research was part of that body of work that has built PIDS to what it is today, one of the world's top government-affiliated think tanks, according to the 2020 Global Go-To Think Tank Index. The Green Book, in particular, is a model of how a policy study published by PIDS would impact policymaking. The recommendations of that study, together with others in the field, would later transform the business climate of rural finance. Thank you, Tina, for your excellence and dedication as a public servant. As we conclude, let us remember that good governance is foundational to our country's resilience against crisis. Localized approaches across regions are crucial. We must play to each area's strengths while addressing their unique challenges, reinforced with support from partners in the national and global levels. I call on our local and international partners to continue collaborating in meetings like this and in other forums and engagements in research and policy development, as well as in facilitating support networks as we strengthen our countries against these global challenges. Again, thank you for all of today's insightful and inspiring discussions. Mabuhay.